The pressure is mounting, and with the Beastmaster exam just days away, the classroom atmosphere is thick with anxiety. Tomorrow is the day that will define their futures, the Beastmaster Qualification Assessment. Teachers urge everyone to rest and prepare, knowing that their entire career depends on the results of this one test. The pressure is getting to everyone, and even the most prepared students are starting to crack under the nerves. Some students are already resigned to the reality that they barely have the skills to become an apprentice, let alone reach the prestigious academy. Others are brimming with misplaced confidence, boasting about their plans to get into decent academies regardless of their actual abilities. For some, this exam is a desperate gamble. If they fail to even pass the apprentice level, their lives are essentially over before they even begin. The looming assessment hangs over everyone's head like a death sentence, but one person feels entirely disconnected from the panic. Lindsay stands in the crowd, a secret heavy on his heart that changes everything about his perspective. He hasn't been himself lately, or rather, he hasn't been in this world for long at all. Only a week ago, he was thrust into this new life, waking up in a body that wasn't his own. As his new memories settle in, the terrifying reality of this world begins to take shape. Centuries ago, a global catastrophe tore reality apart, allowing monstrous beasts to pour out of dimensional rifts. It was a dark age of slaughter, where humanity was hunted, pushed to the brink of total extinction. But humanity didn't just curl up and die, they fought back with everything they had. Through blood and trial, they learned to tame those very beasts, turning their greatest threats into their strongest weapons. The era of the Beastmaster began, and suddenly, those who could control the beasts became the rulers of the new world. To be a Beastmaster is to be elite, a symbol of absolute power and status that every young person dreams of attaining. At 18, everyone is expected to bond with their first beast, their strength determined by the depths of their own soul. But for Lin Zhe, the path to greatness seemed blocked from the very start. The original owner of this body had already made a fatal mistake, binding themselves to a worthless creature long before Lin Zhe arrived. His partner is Little Snowball, a creature so pathetic it's essentially a living plush toy, useless in a fight and incapable of evolving. It isn't just weak, it's a total dead end, leaving Lin Zhe staring down a future of mediocrity. The hopelessness is crushing. Is he destined to be nothing more than an ordinary bystander in a world built for fighters? He can't help but feel cheated, looking at other travelers who wake up with world-shattering powers while he's stuck with a ball of fluff. The cruelty of his situation is almost laughable, trapped in a dead-end destiny. Even his peers have stopped expecting anything from him, pitying his inability to become a true beastmaster. They tell him to just give up, to settle for a safe, low-risk office job where he won't get himself killed. It's a hollow comfort suggesting he should just accept a life without ambition. But then, something shifts. A sudden, system-like prompt flickers before his eyes. His status is laid bare, level, spirit power, and a reminder of his own average physical state. He discovers a system that awards points for achievements, a potential turning point he never saw coming. He learns these points aren't just for show, they can increase growth and unlock hidden potential. He quickly focuses on his companion, eager to see if there's any hidden hope for Little Snowball. The data reveals the creature's current stats, but one line catches his eye: the growth rate and the promise of evolution. Evolution is supposed to be impossible for this creature, yet the system confirms it's within reach. The realization hits him like a lightning bolt. He hasn't been dealt a losing hand after all. If he can actually force an evolution, he won't have to spend his life selling ice cream on a street corner. The burning question remains, can he truly carve a path as a Beastmaster? The system reveals two distinct paths, one of which, the Queen route, offers a terrifying amount of power. This route could propel them to the prestigious King rank, a tier he previously couldn't have even imagined. The shock is palpable. He wasn't looking at a failure, he was looking at a sleeping dragon. The requirements are steep, but the path is finally clear. He decides right then and there to pour his achievement points into his partner. He needs to pass the upcoming assessment to trigger the reward he desperately needs. The pressure to succeed has never been higher, and he is ready to claim his prize. There's only one immediate reward available, and he seizes it without hesitation. He funnels his hard-earned points into the little creature. A rush of energy surges as the creature levels up, proving that the system is real. But the growth rate is just the beginning, and he knows he has much further to go. The evolution process is just starting, and he is determined to see it through. The success is instantaneous, a burst of light that confirms his theories. He is already planning his next steps, knowing that this is just the first hurdle. The realization of the potential strength is overwhelming. He's already beginning to realize that the life of a Beastmaster is going to be incredibly expensive. He knows exactly what he needs to do to reach the next stage. He heads out, ready to gather the necessary materials despite the high cost. His rivals are still lurking, waiting to mock him for the upcoming assessment. They don't know that the tide is already turning. He ignores their taunts, his focus entirely on the future. The target is on his back, but he doesn't fear them anymore. He's ready for the final exam, and he's ready to prove them all wrong. The humiliation continues, but it only fuels his resolve. They mock him for his stuffed animal, unaware of the power growing inside him. The disdain is thick, but he keeps his head held high. He is ready to face the challenge no matter what they think. His friend tries to warn him, but he's already made up his mind. The mockery keeps coming, but he simply walks away. He has bigger plans than arguing with idiots. His reputation might be in tatters for now, but that will change soon. He leaves his friend behind, focused on the mission ahead. The cost of the materials is eating through his savings, but he doesn't care. He knows the price of power, and he is willing to pay it. He's greeted by his friend, who is checking in on him. He returns home, feeling the weight of the day's events. A simple invitation for dinner, a brief moment of normalcy before the storm. He accepts, keeping his cool. The concern in her voice is evident, but he's already moving past the fear. He knows the risks of the upcoming assessment all too well. His determination is catching, and he finally feels like he has a chance. He promises to show them what he's really capable of. He's fully committed to the path ahead. With the materials secured, he returns to his partner. The financial strain is heavy, but the outcome will be worth it. It's time to feed his partner and unlock its true potential. The consumption is peaceful, but the change is about to be monumental. The anticipation is reaching a breaking point as the transformation begins. The little creature erupts in a surge of ice, evolving into its new powerful form before his very eyes. Lindsay stared at his system interface in disbelief, realizing his pet beast had just surged to rank 2. It was an incredible leap in power that left him stunned, as he had only just begun this journey. In a city where the average student's pet barely crawled into the lower stages of rank 1, Lindsay's beast had shattered all expectations by jumping straight to rank 2. The freezing aura radiating from his companion was so intense that even standing near it made him shiver. The sudden massive increase in power was far greater than anything he could have dared to dream. The system marked his first evolution as a success, rewarding him with a rare strength crystal and a bundle of achievement points. He knew none of this would have been possible without the system guiding his hand, forcing him to invest in materials for a creature everyone else considered hopelessly weak. He had taken a massive gamble, and against all odds, that bet had paid off in ways he never imagined. He reached into the void to extract the precious spirit crystal, feeling the weight of his growing potential. With the crystal in hand, he prepared to absorb it, knowing this was the key to unlocking his true capacity as a tamer. He focused on the stone, absorbing its energy as it began to refine his spiritual and physical essence. The strength crystal surged through his body, fortifying his physique and sharpening his senses. He swallowed the energy, feeling his very foundation shift as his body adapted to the sudden infusion of power. His eyes flared with newfound intensity, the world suddenly appearing clearer, sharper, and more dangerous. A wave of icy energy washed over him, a side effect of his bond with the beast, yet he felt stronger than ever before. The aura around him coalesced, a testament to the internal change currently reshaping his entire existence. He checked his status again, watching as his stats ticked upward in real time, cementing his new higher level. The freezing sensation vanished, replaced by a steady, relentless flow of strength pulsing through his limbs. He threw a sharp punch, testing the weight of his new power against the air, satisfied with the results. Even though he didn't need to step onto the battlefield himself, he realized that being physically formidable was an invaluable asset. He took a moment to reflect, knowing that in a world where survival was never guaranteed, this strength was his ultimate insurance policy. With his remaining achievement points, he decided to push his potential even further, dumping them into his growth. A soft, golden light enveloped him as his internal systems recalibrated, forcing his growth rate to climb. The process was instantaneous, a quick surge of adaptation that solidified his progress. He could feel the change settle deep within his core, marking another step forward in his evolution. The system confirmed his climb to rank 2, stage 4, with his growth rate accelerating rapidly. He looked at his companion, witnessing the shift in its aura as it matured alongside him. His eyes hardened with anticipation, already looking ahead to the challenges of the upcoming assessment. He clenched his fist, confident that the evaluators at tomorrow's association would be in for a massive shock. The city streets felt different today. The path to the qualification test was no longer a hurdle, but a stage for his debut. As he stepped outside, he was greeted by the familiar face of his companion, who asked if he was truly ready. He nodded, his mind set on one goal, securing his official qualification as a Beastmaster today. Everything was finally falling into place, and he wasn't about to let this opportunity slip through his fingers. His companion looked at him with a mix of surprise and admiration, noting how drastically his attitude had shifted. Gone was the lethargic student of the past. In his place stood someone hungry for growth and success. He simply smiled, acknowledging that people had a way of changing when they finally found their true path. In the distance, the crowd whispered as Guan Ning, a well-known prodigy, made her presence felt. Observers couldn't help but gossip, wondering why a girl of her status would keep company with someone like him. The rumors were flying thick and fast, fueled by the jealousy of those who couldn't stand her rejection of others. Frustrated voices rose from the sidelines, unable to comprehend what she saw in him. A hushed silence fell among the observers as they realized how closely they were being watched. Guan Ning walked with purpose, her reputation as a genius preceding her, completely unfazed by the murmurs. She stood apart from the crowd, cold and distant, refusing to indulge in the trivial drama surrounding her. Concerned, she looked toward him, questioning if he really intended to use his unconventional pet in the upcoming assessment. He offered a reassuring look, fully confident that his little companion was far more capable than anyone suspected. He wanted this day to be memorable, suggesting they celebrate together once they both passed the test. There was a specific location he had been eyeing for a while, a place he was eager to finally visit. Before they could reach their destination, a voice cut through the air demanding they stop. A group of hostile students blocked their path, their intentions clearly aggressive. The tension spiked as they stood their ground, refusing to be intimidated by the sudden confrontation. A girl stepped forward, pointing an accusatory finger, her face twisted in a mask of pure indignation. Lindsay didn't recognize her, his voice calm as he asked who she was and what she wanted. She accused him of involvement with her boyfriend, claiming his presence was an insult to her. He looked at her, entirely unimpressed, and asked for clarification on exactly who she was talking about. A man appeared behind her, labeled by his peers as a local troublemaker, clutching a rose that looked completely out of place. The air grew heavy with the absurdity of the situation as the man tried to stake his claim. Guan Ning stepped in, her voice cold as she dismissed the man, clarifying that she had rejected him long ago. The girl refused to listen, continuing to scream that Guan Ning had seduced him, desperate to blame someone for her own insecurities. Lindsay realized this wasn't going to end with a polite conversation and decided they had better things to do. He turned to leave, not wanting to waste another second on their pathetic attempts to stir up trouble. The man didn't take the dismissal well, feeling his pride wounded by being ignored. He stepped into their path, threatening them and demanding they acknowledge his authority before leaving. His tone grew menacing, promising retribution for their perceived slight against his companion. He laughed off the threats, his confidence unshaken by the small-time bully standing before him. The bully lunged, intending to use his power to teach them a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Guan Ning flinched, but Lindsay remained calm, eyes locked on the incoming threat. Just as the situation escalated, a voice rang out warning the attacker to stop playing around. The bystanders mocked him, calling him useless and questioning his ability to protect anyone. The attacker sneered, asking if he really wanted to play the role of the hero today. Lindsay watched the man move, his patience finally wearing thin as the man targeted those closest to him. He stepped forward, declaring his relationship and his willingness to handle the situation personally. The surrounding students were shocked, realizing that perhaps they had underestimated him all along. He felt the surge of his own potential, eager to test just how much his physique had improved. The man charged, eyes filled with rage, preparing a strike that he thought would end the fight instantly. Lindsay watched the movement, his heightened senses making the man's attack look painfully slow. He moved with precision, catching the man's fist mid-air with ease, the force of the strike completely neutralized. The attacker's face went pale as he realized he couldn't pull his hand away, his strength totally eclipsed. A swift, decisive blow followed, sending the attacker crashing to the ground with a resounding thud. The shockwave of the impact forced everyone back, the silence that followed deafening. He stood over his fallen opponent, calm and collected, having ended the confrontation in a single move. The onlookers gasped as he stood tall, the reality of his power finally sinking in for everyone watching. With the threat neutralized, he turned his attention back to his companion, ready to continue their day as planned. A surge of blue energy manifested behind him, revealing the silhouette of his powerful ghost wolf as it materialized in the mortal realm. The bully stood firm, his ego ballooning as he taunted the two high schoolers, feeling untouchable with his formidable rank 2 ghost wolf. He laughed at their pathetic display, unaware that the tides were about to turn in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. Little Snowball's transformation was already underway, even if the odds of victory seemed impossibly slim. The pressure mounted, with the girl watching on, terrified that any mistake here would cost them their entire future. She looked on in despair, knowing full well that they were outmatched and running out of time. The mockery reached a boiling point as the taunts intensified, questioning how someone with such bottom-tier qualifications dared to challenge him. The bully continued to sneer, completely blind to the reality unfolding right before his eyes. He couldn't comprehend how they thought they had any hope of surviving this encounter. The girl, paralyzed by fear for her brother, could only watch as the situation spiraled toward disaster. Little Snowball stood ready, its evolution finally complete, shedding its old identity. With a sudden burst of power, it unleashed its newfound strength, silencing the taunts instantly. The transformation was undeniable. The creature that stood before them was far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The air grew deathly cold as the beast commanded the field. It was a master of the frost, turning the very atmosphere into a weapon. The ghost wolf, once a symbol of dominance, now found itself cornered by a chilling, relentless force. The battlefield became a stage for a one-sided slaughter as icy powers surged forward. The air was thick with the sound of freezing energy as the assault intensified. The sheer intensity of the freezing domain left no room for escape. The bully stood frozen, his world crashing down as his rank 2 beast fell in a single decisive move. The realization of his failure hit him like a physical blow. He couldn't fathom the level of power they had just displayed. Desperation set in, realization dawning that they had made a fatal miscalculation. Terror gripped the bullies as they realized their superiority had been a lie. The protagonist, however, had no intention of letting them walk away so easily. He loomed over them, his presence demanding an apology that was long overdue. The tables had turned completely, and the arrogance of the bullies shattered into a trembling mess. They scrambled, desperate to save their own skins as they begged for mercy. His icy gaze gave them no choice but to grovel for forgiveness. Humiliated, the bully was forced to confront his own weakness while his sister watched in horror. The demand for an apology was relentless, leaving no room for excuses. Only then did he finally receive the submission he demanded. With the threat neutralized, the tension finally began to dissipate. The bullies fled, terrified and broken, leaving the pair to process what had just happened. The girl, still stunned, could barely believe the strength her brother had just revealed. They couldn't afford to linger, as the clock was ticking down on their true objective. The evolution of the little beast was baffling, but they had to push it to the back of their minds for now. Their path led them to the looming structure of the Imperial Beast Association. The immense size of the building served as a reminder of the monumental task ahead. The massive, ancient stone sat at the center of the exam venue, humming with hidden power. It looked deceptively mundane to the untrained eye, hiding the gravity of what it represented. The weight of the moment settled over the crowd, as this was the final chance for many. For those who failed, it meant the end of their dreams as Beastmasters. But for those who succeeded, it was the gateway to a life beyond their wildest imaginings. He steeled his resolve, whispering a silent vow that he would not fail here. The examiners gathered, prepared to decide the fate of everyone present. The atmosphere turned professional and cold as the assessment finally began. Each participant was handed a medal, a small token that would determine the course of their future. The inscriptions on the medals dictated the path they were about to walk. It was the key to unlocking the power of the Origin Stone realm. The examiner laid out the stakes, noting that greater risk meant exponentially greater reward. The screen flickered, displaying the brutal truth of the challenges that awaited them. The rewards for higher difficulties were intoxicating, tempting even the most cautious among them. Some couldn't help but dream of reaching for the highest peak. Others were paralyzed by the sheer difficulty of the endeavor. He watched the crowd, calculating his own moves, knowing that his path had to be different. The goal was clear, even if the road to achieving it seemed impossible to others. The examiner offered a final word of caution, urging them to choose wisely. It was a choice that would ripple forward, affecting every stage of their future development. Every word of advice was a stark reminder of the danger lurking within the exam. He turned his focus inward, weighing his strength against the daunting tiers of the test. The decision hung in the air, the girl looking to him with a mix of anxiety and trust. Whispers rippled through the crowd as the rankings updated in real time. Shock turned to disbelief as the results of the choices began to manifest. The crowd was incredulous. Who would dare be so foolish as to aim for the absolute peak? The audacity of the move left everyone speechless. They watched with bated breath, waiting for the inevitable disaster to strike. He remained calm, his expression unreadable as he held the key to his own fate. The decision was made, and there was no turning back now. His quiet confidence was enough to unsettle those who thought they knew better. The eyes of the room were locked on him, waiting to see if he would crumble. He stood on the precipice of greatness, fully aware of the eyes watching him. Whether it was brilliance or madness, only time would tell. He was ready to face the trial that would change everything. The challenge ahead was no longer just an exam, it was a battle for his future. He stepped forward, leaving behind the doubts of those who underestimated him. The path to evolution was within his reach, and he intended to take whatever challenges the Origin Stone held. He was ready to conquer them. The world was about to see what he was truly capable of. His determination was etched into his every move. There was no room for hesitation, only the relentless pursuit of power. The final test had arrived, and he would not be found lacking. He looked toward the horizon of his potential with eyes that saw exactly what he needed to do. The journey toward becoming the ultimate Beastmaster had truly begun. Every sacrifice had led him to this exact moment. He was prepared for the trials, the danger, and the glory that lay ahead. The screen glowed with the weight of his choice, marking him as an anomaly. With a steady hand and a calm heart, he embraced the challenge that everyone else feared. Lindsay's decision sent a shockwave of disbelief through the crowd, leaving everyone stunned by his reckless choice of the superior difficulty. His companion looked on in pure horror, realizing that if he failed this high-stakes trial, his chance to join the prestigious Beastmaster Academy would vanish instantly. Unfazed by the surrounding panic, Lindsay remained calm, holding the mysterious object that would determine his fate. The surrounding students couldn't help but whisper, questioning if he had truly lost his mind to select such an impossible path. The examiners watched with narrowed eyes, openly mocking him for choosing a difficulty that guaranteed failure. Lindsay ignored their taunts, his expression icy and resolute as he stood his ground against the mounting pressure. When challenged on whether he actually expected to pass, he simply didn't flinch, standing by his conviction. His response was short and final, making it clear that his choice was not made in haste, but through cold, calculated logic. The examiner scoffed, openly doubting that someone so young could possibly overcome such an overwhelming obstacle. He turned his back on Lindsay, dismissing him as just another arrogant fool about to pay the ultimate price for his overconfidence. With the warning ignored, the atmosphere grew heavy as the moment of truth finally arrived. The assessment was officially underway, casting a daunting shadow over every participant. Everyone took their places, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Lindsay locked his gaze on the swirling energy before him, ready to step into the unknown. The examiner watched the scene with a smug grin, already imagining the moment Lindsay would regret his defiance. The portal flared to life, marking the beginning of the grueling test. As the barrier materialized, the sheer scale of the challenge became undeniable. Stepping inside, the environment shifted into the virtual realm, where the true battle for his future began. The examiner recognized the potential in Lindsay, though he remained skeptical of his survival. The landscape transformed into a complex grid of trials, and the examiners tracked his progress with intense focus. The massive structure loomed above, a silent witness to the carnage that was about to unfold. Lindsay stood alone in the center of the arena, his focus sharpening as the world around him faded into the background. He carefully assessed his surroundings, searching for any advantage the Origin Stone might provide in this hostile simulation. The rules were simple but brutal. Anything experienced here was merely a simulation, meaning death would only cost him his ambition, not his life. Armed with that grim knowledge, he pushed aside his fear, ready to unleash the full extent of his power. He moved with purpose, eyes scanning for the first sign of an enemy. A notification chimed in his mind, signaling a hidden achievement unlocked by his very first strike. His grin widened. The system was responding to his actions, providing him the edge he desperately needed. He didn't hesitate, immediately claiming the rewards to bolster his strength. The resources flowed into him, a surge of power that felt like a lifeline in this chaotic space. Instantly, he channeled the energy, pushing his spirit attribute to new, unprecedented heights. He could feel his bond with his pet deepening, their growth rate accelerating as they leveled up to match the mounting danger. He knew now that victory wasn't just possible, it was well within his grasp. A flame-wreathed creature burst onto the field, testing his resolve. Lindsay studied the creature, confused by its low rank despite the supposed difficulty of the trial. He wasted no time, commanding his companion to strike with icy precision. The icicles manifested in the air, humming with a power that far outstripped his opponent. The attack collided, and the result was clear. his control was vastly superior. The first level fell, but he knew this was just the beginning of a 5-part gauntlet. Without pausing, he pushed forward, hungry to prove exactly what he was capable of. The next challenger emerged from the darkness, a ghastly, undead monstrosity. While others might have struggled against such a foe, Lindsay barely gave it a second thought. To him, this was nothing more than a warm-up, a trivial hurdle on his path to the top. He watched as the examiner on the outside finally realized that his expectations were completely misplaced. The mockery faded from the examiner's face, replaced by a flicker of genuine shock. Lindsay brushed off the debris, his confidence unshakable as he prepared for the next wave. The examiner sneered, attempting to diminish his performance by blaming it on a lucky elemental matchup. Lindsay kept his arms crossed, waiting for the real test to begin. The heavy gates groaned open, revealing the next stage of the nightmare. A massive, grotesque creature lunged from the shadows, its terrifying eyes fixated on its prey. With a deafening roar, it prepared to tear through anyone foolish enough to stand against it. The beast loomed over the arena, a towering display of power that would have broken a lesser spirit. The system identified the threat, marking the start of a battle that would push him to his absolute limit. Lindsay didn't flinch, fully prepared to stare down the darkness and come out the other side. He remained calm, his breathing steady, waiting for the monster to make its move. The beast surged forward, a blur of motion and raw, primal fury. He dodged with effortless grace, his eyes calculating the precise moment to strike back. The clash began, the sound of their encounter echoing throughout the silent arena. Every movement was a dance, a deadly choreography that favored his superior strategy. He countered every attack, proving that even a higher-ranked beast was no match for his current state. The pressure mounted as he began to dismantle the monster piece by piece. With each blow, he felt the thrill of the hunt, his spirit surging with newfound intensity. He wasn't just surviving, he was dominating the battlefield with absolute ease. The beast staggered, finally realizing that its opponent was far more dangerous than it had initially perceived. Lindsay stood amidst the chaos, a calm shadow in a world of flame and ice. The final challenge lay ahead, and he was more than ready to claim his victory. The atmosphere in the testing hall is thick with tension as spectators realize the beast facing the challenger is far stronger than expected. It is a Rank 2, Stage 2 nightmare, an opponent designed specifically to crush the dreams of any apprentice who dares to think they can pass. The creature moves with lethal grace, its massive primal form easily shrugging off incoming attack. Even an ice-based assault, usually enough to freeze an opponent in its tracks, is stopped cold by the beast's thick, armored hide. Lindsay stands his ground, observing the beast with cold, analytical eyes, refusing to let the pressure break his focus. The beast lunges, forcing a desperate defensive scramble as the environment itself begins to crumble under the sheer power of the collision. Rocks shatter and splinter, but Lindsay doesn't flinch, calculating his next move even as his defenses are pushed to the limit. He commands his pet to retaliate, unleashing a specialized skill designed to bind and restrict the monster's movement. The creature is caught in a web of restrictive energy, its wild strength momentarily dampened by the sudden entrapment. With the target restrained, the order is given to unleash a chilling, localized assault designed to sap the creature's remaining vitality. The struggle intensifies, the beast thrashing violently as the vines tighten, threatening to crush the life out of it. But the creature is not easily tamed. With a brutal display of raw power, it breaks free from the hold, ready to counterattack. The battlefield is engulfed in a flash of blinding light, signaling the start of a final desperate trade of blows. An onlooker watches from the sidelines, realization dawning on their face as they recognize the terrifying reality of the challenge. The challenger, however, is not yielding, refusing to let his focus waver for even a fraction of a second. The beast counters, filling the air with a savage, piercing hiss that chills the bones of everyone watching. A massive wave of ice crashes across the floor, turning the arena into a frozen wasteland in a single devastating move. Lindsay watches through the frost, his eyes narrowing as he realizes the sheer, overwhelming power he is up against. He calls upon his full strength, surrounding the area in an extreme cold domain to tip the scales in his favor. The pressure is immense, yet he stares down the danger, daring the beast to test his resolve. The frost solidifies, locking the field in a stalemate that forces the beast to slow its relentless assault. With a calm, almost predatory smile, Lindsay prepares to deliver the final blow of this intense exchange. Spikes of jagged ice erupt from the ground, piercing the space where the beast stood just a heartbeat ago. The area is completely submerged in a frozen storm, hiding the outcome of the collision from the anxious crowd. Slowly, the icy shroud settles, revealing the absolute dominance of his precise, calculated strategy. The ice shatters, leaving the beast pinned and immobilized, its movements finally brought to a complete halt. Lindsay stands victorious over the frozen wreckage, his expression unreadable as the dust begins to clear. The ice continues to creep forward, sealing the victory and confirming the end of this grueling test. Elsewhere, the cycle of the assessment continues, with other challengers facing their own brutal realities within the dark testing halls. A young man recoils, the weight of another failure crashing down on him as he realizes he isn't strong enough. Desperation fills the room. The gap between the average student and the elite is becoming painfully clear. He clenches his fists, the frustration of being inches away from success. He turns away, forced to confront the stinging regret of falling just short of his goal. Another challenger cries out in anguish, the sheer difficulty of the sixth stage proving to be a mountain they simply cannot climb. "I succeeded!" a voice screams out, though the tone is filled with the frantic, manic energy of someone who barely survived. He falls to his knees, sobbing with relief as the reality that he is now an apprentice beastmaster finally sinks in. Nearby, others look on with a mixture of envy and exhaustion, their own spirits dampened by the constant stream of defeats. The vicious claw beast is mentioned in hushed, terrified tones, a name that strikes fear into the hearts of every novice. The crowd gathers, whispering about the anomaly of a rank 2 beast appearing in such an early assessment. A young woman watches intently, her eyes reflecting a mix of shock and admiration for the one who dared to challenge the superior difficulty. The path is clear, yet the danger has never been higher, and the true test is only just beginning. The portal shimmers, signaling the arrival of the final, most daunting challenge of the entire assessment. The air turns frigid as a new, more powerful manifestation of the test. It is a monster of unparalleled strength, a challenge that makes all previous levels seem like mere child's play. The crowd erupts in murmurs, wondering how anyone could possibly survive such an impossible encounter. A young woman stands among them, her heart racing as she watches the boy she knows, Lindsay, stand against the impossible. She is completely captivated, her own ambitions fueled by the display of pure, unadulterated strength unfolding before her. The news spreads like wildfire. Lindsay has passed the 4th level, and he did it on the hardest difficulty setting. Whispers of awe fill the room as students who once ignored him now look on with newfound respect. But the celebration is cut short by a terrifying primal roar that shakes the very foundation of the building. From the shadows of the arena emerges a creature of pure ferocity, its presence signaling a shift in the entire assessment. It is a saber-toothed lion, a predator at the peak of rank 2, stage 5. The crowd falls silent, the sheer terror of the beast paralyzing those who thought they were prepared. The woman watches, her pulse pounding as she realizes the stakes have moved past simple testing into the realm of survival. Lindsay remains calm, his eyes meeting the burning, blood-red gaze of the lion without a hint of fear. He signals for his partner, knowing that this is the moment that will define his future as a beastmaster. The duel begins with a blur of motion, the lion closing the distance with terrifying speed. Lindsay narrowly avoids a lethal strike, his instincts firing as the lion's claws rip through the air where he just stood. So fast, he realizes, knowing that a single mistake will cost him everything. The lion launches a savage claw assault, every swipe capable of shredding stone and steel alike. His pet desperately tries to shield him, absorbing the brunt of the assault as the pressure begins to mount. The lion continues its relentless pursuit, forcing them into a corner with no obvious path for escape. Lindsay feels the weight of the moment, his expression hardening as he prepares to counter. The lion prepares to strike, confident that the end of this battle is within its reach. "Young man, I admit you have some strength," the spectators mutter, "but this is truly the end for you." The beast lunges one final time, a whirlwind of claws and teeth descending upon them. They barely manage to evade, the dust kicking up around them as they retreat to find a gap in the lion's defenses. Lindsay watches, his mind racing through strategies trying to find a weakness in the beast's perfect offensive. He studies the lion's rhythm, looking for the split second of vulnerability he needs to turn the tide. Although the ice crystal spirit is one stage higher, he thinks strength isn't just about level. He knows that attributes, environmental factors, and tactical brilliance are the true arbiters of victory. His pet is weakening, having endured 4 consecutive battles against top-tier threats. He understands that the saber-toothed lion is a specialized predator, built for one-on-one dominance. The speed and power advantage is clear, and the mounting fatigue is starting to take a visible toll. "If I go on like this," he whispers to himself, "I might really lose." He shuts out the noise of the crowd, focusing entirely on the burning intensity of the battle. He must remain patient, searching for the singular golden opportunity that could end the fight in an instant. The lion prepares for another charge, its muscles tensing with predatory focus. Lindsay's partner readies itself, drawing upon its last reserves of energy for the final command. Ice Crystal Spirit, get ready, he orders, his voice steady despite the chaos. Now's the time, the command is given, and the two launch their final combined assault. They strike with precision, the ice forming into a spear aimed directly at the lion's vitals. A thunderous impact echoes through the hall as the ice strikes home, momentarily stalling the beast. The lion crashes into the ground, shards of ice flying in every direction as it struggles to regain its footing. The crowd gasps, disbelief washing over them as they witness the impossible. The lion lets out a pained, guttural cry, clearly disoriented by the unexpected turn of events. It stumbles, struggling to overcome the freezing influence that has locked its joints. The stalemate is broken, and for the first time, the predator looks as though it might actually fall. Lindsay stares down his opponent, his mind racing as he realizes the sheer power required to hold his own against a Rank 2, Stage 5 saber-toothed lion. It is a dangerous gamble, but Lindsay knows that if he can survive this, it proves his pet beast's power level is far higher than anyone expected. He can barely contain his excitement, realizing he has managed to keep this incredible trump card hidden from everyone until now. A look of cold calculation crosses his face as the weight of his decision begins to settle in. The beast lunges forward, its raw power surging with lethal intent. The clash is violent, the air crackling with the intensity of their struggle. Desperation creeps into the fight, every movement becoming a test of survival against the beast's ferocious strength. But in the heat of battle, a new power awakens, pulsing with an icy, supernatural glow. The creature stands resolute, a small figure radiating a power that defies its size. With a focused glare, it prepares to unleash a wave of frozen destruction. The battlefield shudders as a massive surge of ice energy erupts, threatening to overwhelm everything in its path. The saber-toothed lion fights against the onslaught, but the freezing torrent is relentless. Even as it tries to strike, its powerful claws are encased in thick, unforgiving ice. The beast feels the restraint tightening, its movements sluggish and heavy as the cold takes hold. It stands its ground, fighting for every inch, but the environment itself has turned against it. The beast struggles to move, its body becoming a prisoner of the sudden, plummeting temperatures. Lindsay watches with a satisfied smirk, fully aware that his opponent's natural resistance is no match for this level of extreme cold. The pressure is immense, and the beast finds itself truly trapped. A sudden cryptic system notification flashes before Lindsay's eyes, signaling that the tide of battle has officially turned. 10 successful skill activations mark a massive milestone, finally unlocking the hidden potential of his pet beast's ability. Lindsay stares at the new interface, his heart pounding at the prospect of the power he is about to command. He reviews the details of the Arctic Chains, a control skill capable of binding even the strongest targets in a cage of ice. He weighs his options, noting the ice shield, an impenetrable defense that can block attacks from any angle. The Frost Nova appears as a devastating area of effect attack, a tactical nuke designed to shatter everything in its way. He is stunned, realizing that he actually has the ability to customize and add more skills to his arsenal. He takes a breath, realizing that the standard limitations of pet beasts simply do not apply to him. He evaluates his current loadout, understanding that he needs to balance his offensive and defensive capabilities carefully. His mind turns to the icicle attack, a reliable tool but one he knows is far from enough for the challenges ahead. He focuses on his needs, acknowledging that the current fight requires a decisive, single-target control technique. The system confirms his choice, the Arctic Chains locking in as the ultimate solution for his current dilemma. He watches as the achievement points are deducted, a small price to pay for such a significant tactical advantage. He waits, anticipating the exact moment the rest of his points will be put to use. He turns his gaze back to the arena, ready to put his new weapon to the ultimate test. The battlefield remains a frozen wasteland, the remnants of his previous attacks littering the ground. He commands his spirit, watching as the shadows of his new power begin to manifest. The air screams as the Arctic Chains materialize, crackling with volatile energy. The saber-toothed lion roars in defiance, but it is already too late. The ice bites into the beast, locking its limbs and rendering it helpless against the onslaught. The creature collapses, the weight of the chains dragging it down into the frozen abyss. Lindsay watches the struggle, cold and detached, knowing the battle is already decided. He stands calm, the master of the chaos unfolding before him. The beast fights to break free, but the cold is absolute, seeping into its very bone. He readies himself, seizing the moment to end this assessment once and for all. He calls out the command, and the freezing energy converges with singular purpose. The impact is deafening, a shockwave of ice that echoes through the entire arena. The beast bellows in agony as the power slams into it, shattering its final defenses. The ice creates a spectacle of light, drawing the shocked attention of everyone watching. Lindsay is illuminated by the ethereal glow, his status rising with every passing second. His pet beast undergoes a profound transformation, its growth rate skyrocketing as it breaks through its previous limits. The onlookers are left speechless, unable to comprehend the display of power they have just witnessed. Doubt begins to take root in their minds, their disbelief manifests in their nervous whispers. They cannot fathom how someone could progress so quickly without any visible preparation or material. The air is thick with questions, and the sense of awe in the room is palpable. Lindsay barely glances at them, his focus remaining entirely on his path forward. He signals his pet to strike again, showing no mercy to his defeated opponent. The beast obeys, surging forward with renewed agility and intent. The chains lash out again, relentless and terrifying in their precision. The saber-toothed lion is struck, the force of the hit sending it reeling. The creature is pinned to the floor, its roars fading into whimpers of defeat. The ice continues to pile up, turning the arena into a tomb of frozen statues. The audience watches in stunned silence, their initial skepticism replaced by genuine fear. Lindsay is perfectly composed, watching his handiwork with a look of quiet satisfaction. The beast is completely overwhelmed, its massive form buried under the suffocating frost. He relishes the momentum, eager to push his partner even further. The glow intensifies, a sign of his absolute control over the elements. The final blow is struck, pinning the beast into the ice for the final count. A figure leaps into the spotlight, the realization of his victory finally sinking in. The crowd erupts, but the undertone is one of bewilderment and shock. He stands amidst the wreckage, the undisputed victor of an impossible challenge. Even his rivals cannot help but feel the sting of his unprecedented success. They look for excuses, whispering of bribery, unable to accept that he is simply better. He is quickly surrounded, the atmosphere shifting from cold hostility to intense curiosity. He feels the rush of his accomplishment, the physical toll of the battle nothing compared to the high of victory. The system confirms his rewards, his physical and mental stats surging as he levels up. He catalogs his new status, noting the massive increase in power that will make him a force to be reckoned with. He looks at his partner, now evolved and stronger than ever before. With the trial ending, he prepares to return to the real world, already planning his next move. The transition is abrupt, the virtual arena fading as the reality of his new life as a powerful beastmaster truly begins. The examiner stands before Lindsay, his voice thick with genuine respect as he praises the young man's performance. He openly admits that his previous judgment was wrong, realizing now that Lindsay's unwavering confidence is born from true terrifying strength rather than mere impulsiveness. The surrounding crowd watches in absolute shock. They have never seen an examiner humble himself like this for any student. Lindsay remains unfazed, his cool demeanor showing that he wasn't affected by the earlier tension. Seizing the moment, the examiner offers Lindsay a position within the prestigious Beast Tamers Association as a reserve officer, promising a salary and additional benefits. He assures the young man that this won't hinder his path to the Imperial Beast Academy, guaranteeing him the title of deacon the moment he graduates. The crowd erupts in whispers, urging him to accept the life-changing offer immediately. They all know that joining the association is a path reserved only for the elite few who graduate from the Imperial Academy. It is a cutthroat competition where thousands fight for a single opening. Lindsay weighs his options, realizing that accepting this now would secure his finances and status for the next 4 years, making him the envy of everyone around him. But as he considers the offer, a deeper caution sets in. He knows that in this world, nothing is ever truly free, and he is wary of the hidden costs. He also realizes that the association carries heavy rules and restrictions, and he refuses to trade away his freedom so early in his journey. Politely but firmly, Lindsay rejects the offer, thanking the examiner for the kindness, but stating clearly that he has his own plans for the future. A nearby student immediately jumps at the chance, begging the examiner to give him the spot instead, but he is ignored. The examiner sighs, realizing that with Lindsay's explosive growth rate, he will eventually be strong enough to demand far greater rewards than what is currently on the table. The examiner finally relents, telling Lindsay that he won't force him. He leaves the door open, telling Lindsay that if he ever changes his mind or needs anything, he knows where to find it. As the examiner departs, Lindsay's peers immediately surround him, desperate to get his attention before he leaves. Guan tries to get his attention, but the other students are already crowding him. Lu Xian and Zhang Xiaoyun approach him, clearly trying to get close to the rising star. They don't hold back, shamelessly asking for his contact information and demanding to be added as his friends. They gush about how they've taken a liking to him since the beginning, clearly hoping to latch on to his future success. Lindsay, wanting to avoid the drama, congratulates them but insists he has to leave immediately. As he tries to slip away, they continue to hound him, begging for a connection before he disappears. A sudden notification dings on his phone, cutting through the noise. It's an urgent message from his teacher. He acknowledges the summons, heading straight for the office to see what she wants. He knocks and asks if she was looking for him, stepping into the room. His teacher sits there, impressed, having heard the news that he passed the superior difficulty trial. She beams at him, telling him how highly the faculty thinks of his potential. She reveals the real reason for the meeting. She has a gift to help him get ahead. She hands him a collection of basic spirit techniques, explaining that these are required reading for any apprentice. He takes the book, realizing how valuable this head start truly is. She explains that beyond taming beasts, these techniques are the most vital way for a master to defend themselves. Mastering these allows a beast master to stand their ground and kill even the fiercest monsters without relying solely on their pet. It isn't just about offense, it provides a necessary shield to keep them alive in the heat of battle. Lindsay thanks his teacher with sincere gratitude for her guidance. She tells him not to hesitate to return if he ever hits a wall in his training. He looks at the technique, Spirit Guardian, a skill that creates a protective barrier capable of resisting damage from any direction by consuming spirit power. He understands that preparation is key to staying ahead. He commits to mastering the basics now so he can focus entirely on advanced training once he enters the academy. Back in the safety of his room, he begins the meditation process. He settles in, focusing his mind and energy to unlock the technique. Almost immediately, he realizes he has already grasped the core of it. He is stunned, realizing that what would take an average person weeks, he has accomplished in a mere 10 minutes. He credits his success to his high spirit constitution of 7-8, which is proving to be incredibly powerful. A system notification confirms the success, announcing that he has officially mastered the spirit technique. He receives a reward of 100 achievement points, bringing his total to 350. The system offers him a choice: consume 50 of those points to upgrade the Spirit Guardian skill further. He feels the surge of power, realizing the system's utility is far greater than he imagined. He confirms the upgrade, feeling his spirit energy sharpen. The realization hits him with full force: the system doesn't just manage his beasts, it actively boosts his own cultivation techniques. With this new advantage, he knows he is on a path that no other Beastmaster could ever hope to replicate. With his achievement points piling up, he knew exactly what to do. He immediately dived into his system, pouring those hard-earned points into sharpening his ability. The air hummed with energy as he focused, testing the limits of his growing power. A protective aura bloomed around him, stronger and more expansive than ever before. A confident smirk played on his lips. He was finally becoming someone who could actually hold his own. He checked his status again, his eyes widening at the massive reserves of spirit power now at his disposal. The realization hit him: he could sustain his defenses dozens of times over without breaking a sweat. He remembered the spirit stone he'd been gifted for his achievement, realizing it was high time to put it to good use. He watched in awe as the stone's energy flowed into him, pushing his spirit levels to even greater heights. With his baseline power shattered and his potential skyrocketing, he felt an unstoppable momentum building within. He looked over his arsenal. Having nothing but a shield felt wasteful, so he decided to branch out. He channeled a precise strike, feeling the energy snap into place with deadly accuracy. It was more than just a simple attack, it was a new level of offensive mastery. Testing his new skills, he marveled at the raw potential behind each movement. Success tasted sweet as the system notified him of the rewards for mastering these new techniques. The Spirit Replenishing Potion was a game-changer, a literal lifesaver for the long battles ahead. He tucked the potion away, promising himself he'd only break the seal when things got truly desperate. With his signature techniques now significantly more lethal, he felt a surge of pride in his rapid progress. He decided to hold on to his remaining points, keeping them as an emergency buffer for whatever chaos the future held. Money was the immediate priority if he ever wanted to get his hands on a second pet beast. He stepped into the mission center, ready to turn his newfound strength into cold, hard cash. He scanned the board with ease, confident that he was finally ready for his first real job. The potential missions were varied, each promising a decent payday for the right hunter. The most dangerous and most lucrative mission caught his eye immediately. Without hesitation, he locked onto the job with the highest bounty, intent on making a name for himself. The system, however, had different plans, automatically pairing him with a team for the sake of his own safety. He was furious. He didn't need a babysitter, he needed to prove his worth on his own terms. The deadline was firm, and the destination was waiting. He had to move fast if he wanted to reach the canyon on time. The trek to Diet Toll Canyon was daunting, but he arrived with his resolve hardened. A veteran stood waiting, his eyes narrowing as he sized up the ungraduated rookie. The man's skepticism was palpable. Clearly, he didn't think a kid like him belonged in the field. A woman stepped in, her tone dismissive yet protective, brushing off the tension with a light-hearted jest. She greeted him with a playful air, though her eyes were sharper than she let on. He offered a polite, humble response, keeping his head down and playing the role of the green recruit. His obedience earned him a chuckle from the group, masking the underlying dangers of the mission ahead. Their leader snapped them back to reality, reminding them that this wasn't a game. The captain made it clear, the hierarchy was set and his share of the rewards would be minimal. He stood silently, listening as the others whispered about his lack of qualification. They saw him as nothing more than a failed student who relied on outdated basic training. He kept his cool, masking his true abilities behind a friendly, unassuming smile. He knew the game they were playing. The more effort you put in, the bigger the reward, regardless of what they said now. He decided to play along for the moment, nodding as if he agreed to their term. The captain dismissed him with a huff, eager to get the job done and be done with the kid. They plunged into the darkness, the team's presence shifting from casual to tactical as they neared the beast's nest. A hulking rhinoceros beast loomed in the shadows, its rank and stage signaling a dangerous encounter. A deadly mantis flickered into view, its razor-sharp appendages ready to cut through anyone foolish enough to get close. He stayed focused, his eyes tracking every movement as his teammates took the lead. The woman kept her eyes on him, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness as she drew him into the fray. The team moved forward, tension tightening in the air as the sounds of the creatures grew louder. The path ahead was grim, leading deep into the bowels of the earth where the beasts swarmed. A low, rhythmic scraping filled the tunnel, a warning that they had stepped into a nest of monsters. The shadows danced as the creatures began to emerge, their bioluminescent bodies casting an eerie glow. They were being watched from every angle by things that wanted them dead. The veterans didn't hesitate, surging forward to engage the first wave of threats. The rhino charged, a mountain of armored muscle that demanded immediate respect. The green-haired hunter signaled his strike, showing off his own specialized beast in the heat of battle. The mantis struck with blinding speed, its blades vibrating with lethal intent. The woman pulled him close, her voice a calm instruction amidst the sudden eruption of violence. A massive, buzzing predator descended from the ceiling, its presence dominating the narrow corridor. Its stinger crackled with terrifying energy, marking it as a high-level threat that could end their mission in an instant. The mission seemed simple enough at first, just a quick hunt to clear out some pests. He watched his companions charge in, confident that their combined strength would make short work of the infestation. They didn't waste a second, diving straight into the heart of the swarm with reckless abandon. The battlefield turned into a blur of motion as they unleashed their attacks, intent on crushing everything in their path. But there was one who stayed back, calmly observing the chaotic display rather than jumping into the fray. He commanded his fear wasp to strike, confident that their coordinated assault would easily overwhelm the beetles. The stinging insects swarmed forward, eager to prove their worth against the gathering mass of monsters. He boasted to the newcomer, smugly suggesting that simply watching and cheering from the sidelines was all that was required. He didn't hold back his condescension, mocking the new guy and telling him he should be paying for the privilege of observing such a display. With a dismissive wave, he promised that they'd toss him a small cut of the rewards later, provided he stayed out of the way and kept himself safe. The insects, however, remained unfazed by the flurry of fancy moves directed at them. What began as a routine extermination quickly shifted in tone as an ear-piercing shriek echoed through the cavern. The swarm parted, and something entirely different emerged from the depths of the hole. A chill ran down her spine. The sound was unlike anything she had heard before, and it spelled trouble. The blade-like appendages of the new arrivals glinted in the dim light, signaling a far deadlier threat than the common beetles. The creatures pressed their assault, their movements relentless and coordinated, overwhelming their opponents. The tide of the battle had turned in an instant, and the sheer number of the beasts began to press them into a corner. Panic began to set in as they scrambled to regroup, realizing they had completely underestimated the scale of this threat. The realization struck with brutal clarity. They weren't just dealing with a nest. There was something much larger lurking in the dark. He turned to his companions, his voice strained as he warned them that they were walking into a death trap. The connection to his beasts suddenly snapped, leaving him blind and defenseless against the encroaching tide. Desperation clawed at his throat as he realized his fear wasp had been completely cut off from his command. He spun around, lashing out in frustration at the newcomer, demanding to know why he hadn't warned them if he knew the truth all along. The insults flew, but they were born from the raw terror of realizing his prized partner was being overwhelmed. He was told to forget about his pet and focus entirely on his own survival, because the situation had turned fatal. The grim reality of the mission finally settled in. This was no beginner-level hunt, it was a slaughter. He scrambled backward, shouting for everyone to run while there was still a chance, his composure completely shattered. The creatures didn't hesitate, swarming over their fallen prey with cold, calculated precision. One by one, the others watched in horror as their companions' beasts were pinned and incapacitated. The paralysis took hold instantly, rendering their defenses useless and leaving them exposed to the swarm. The weight of the danger hit her, and the primal urge to run took over. He turned on the newcomer again, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and fear, demanding answers for the hidden danger. He was desperate for someone to blame for the nightmare they were now trapped in. He looked at the others, his face pale as he realized that staying meant certain death. He tried to pull himself together, but his instincts screamed at him to retreat before he lost everything. The swarm seemed to grow denser, filling every inch of the cavern, cutting off any hope of an easy escape. The creatures pressed their advantage, their dark forms moving with a singular, terrifying purpose. He barely escaped the initial wave, his heart hammering against his ribs as he realized how close he had come to the end. The commander of the swarm lunged, a massive, crushing force that leveled the ground beneath them. He was forced to fall back, his breathing ragged as he stared into the abyss of the oncoming horde. The realization of how quickly their lives could end forced a desperate final stand. He felt the life drain out of his defenses, his eyes widening as he witnessed the sheer scale of the swarm. There was no more time for talk or bravado. The only thing left was to survive the next few seconds. He threw up a protective barrier, his last line of defense against the relentless onslaught. The barrier glowed to life, holding the crushing weight of the beetles at bay. He watched in disbelief, his eyes fixed on the shimmering shield that had appeared out of nowhere. He recognized the technique immediately, his voice filled with shock as he realized what he was looking at. It was a technique reserved only for the elite of the Imperial Beast Academy, a skill no ordinary student should possess. The confusion was etched onto his face. How could someone so young command such power? He told them to stop their incessant whining and to keep their eyes on what was happening. He stood his ground, focused on the swirling energy as he prepared to reveal what he was truly capable of. They stared in stunned silence, completely unable to comprehend the nature of the spirit beast that was now manifesting. They had never encountered anything like it, and the sheer power radiating from it left them paralyzed. They were completely out of their depth, clinging to the only hope they had left. He lamented the lack of area of effect skills, realizing they were effectively powerless against the sheer numbers they were facing. He reached out, his hand glowing with an ethereal frost, preparing to turn the tide of the battle. The cold began to bleed into the air, a sign that the real fight was about to begin. He looked at the frozen air and shivered, finally understanding the true gap in their strength. He had the ability to end this, and he wasn't about to waste another moment. The temperature in the cavern plummeted, and the air itself began to crystallize as he unleashed his power. The massive, crushing weight of the beetles was suddenly brought to a halt, frozen mid-motion by the sudden arrival of the Arctic domain. The frost spread with terrifying speed, locking the swarm in an icy cage. He watched as the landscape shifted from a dusty cavern to a frozen tomb. The others stood stunned, witnessing the absolute annihilation of the swarm that had threatened to tear them apart. The intensity of the ice left no room for escape, forcing the beetles into a permanent frozen state. He offered them one final cold chance to save their own beasts, but only if they were prepared to forfeit everything else they had fought for. The tension at the frozen cavern entrance was suffocating as the group desperately begged for their pet beasts back so they could flee. They were terrified, snapping at the young man, calling him a brat for threatening them when they just wanted to survive. One of them scoffed, unable to believe that this high school student could actually be the legendary Lin Zhe, the prodigy who cleared the hardest trial. But as the truth sank in, their arrogance shattered instantly, replaced by sheer shock that a mere student possessed such overwhelming power. The realization left them stunned and speechless, forced to confront the fact that they had been completely outclassed. They quickly shifted their tone, pleading for him to save their trapped pets, desperate to regain what they had lost. Lindsay remained cold and indifferent to their pleas, firmly telling them that his word alone didn't make their pathetic situation any less their own fault. They continued to bicker, demanding he unfreeze the area immediately so they could retreat, completely ignoring the danger surrounding them. The reality of the situation finally hit them, as they realized they were too blind and arrogant to recognize true strength when it stood right in front of them. Lindsay warned them bluntly that time was running out, and the ice was about to melt, urging them to take their beasts and vanish before the swarm awoke. They hesitated, still caught up in their own fear, asking what he intended to do if they left him behind. Lindsay knew these creatures couldn't be killed through brute force alone. They had to neutralize the source of the threat. He understood the true objective. To end the infestation, the swarm's king had to be hunted down and eliminated. The others whispered in disbelief, terrified that this kid was actually planning to charge straight into the heart of the darkness. They scrambled away as Lindsay stepped forward, his eyes scanning the pitch-black tunnel with a clarity he hadn't possessed before. The improvement to his physical body had sharpened his senses far beyond human limits, allowing him to navigate the void as if it were daylight. Suddenly, the swarm surged, forcing Lindsay to realize the sheer scale of the threat was far greater than he had anticipated. His spirit power was being pushed to the absolute limit, and he knew that simply holding the line wouldn't be enough to survive. He desperately needed an edge, and he remembered he still had unspent achievement points that could change the tide of battle. He quickly accessed his system, weighing his options between an impenetrable defensive shield or a devastating area of effect attack. With his points tallied, he realized he had just enough to unlock both, turning the tide of his training instantly. As the system confirmed the skills were mastered, a surge of power coursed through his ice crystal spirit. Now, the ice crystal spirit could move independently, no longer tethered to the spirit guardian and free to unleash its full potential. The Frost Nova was exactly what he needed, capable of dealing massive damage to the swarm that crowded the cavern. He had to master the timing, pulling in surrounding ice elements to coordinate with his Arctic domain for maximum impact. He commanded his spirit, watching as the ice gathered and the elements obeyed his will. The ice gathered with intense pressure, setting the stage for an explosive counterattack against the approaching beetle. Lindsay stood his ground, letting the protective shield take the brunt of the assault as he focused on his next move. The swarm pressed in relentlessly, but he remained calm, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash his new power. The beetles were relentless, a never-ending tide of threats that pushed his defenses to the brink. He knew he couldn't hold on like this forever. He had to break through their formation to survive. He watched them swarm over his defenses, his resolve hardening as he prepared to turn the tide. He focused, pouring his will into the spirit, ready to deliver a blow that would shatter their numbers. The spirit guardian flared to life, a beacon of freezing energy meant to protect him as he prepared the final assault. He unleashed the Frost Nova, a devastating release of ice that turned the cavern into a frozen graveyard. The explosion of ice shattered the ground, obliterating everything caught within its lethal reach. It was a display of pure raw power, sweeping through the tunnel and clearing the path forward. The area was silenced as the massive attack connected, leaving nothing but broken husks of the beetle swarm. 50 of the creatures had been wiped out in an instant, marking a significant turn in the battle. The protective shield finally shattered, but the path was clear, and the threat had been neutralized. Lindsay looked at the aftermath, recognizing that the sheer output of this new move was beyond his initial expectation. His ice crystal spirit had leveled up, growing stronger and faster, with its growth rate climbing steadily toward a new evolution. The system logs confirmed his progress, detailing the new rank and the promise of the Snow Lady form. He reviewed his arsenal, noting the powerful skills at his disposal, knowing he was becoming a force to be reckoned with. He realized that while battle was a slow way to grow, the abundance of enemies in this hive made it the perfect training ground. His growth rate hit 89%, and he could feel his companion on the verge of a breakthrough into the next stage. A primal guttural roar echoed from the deep, signaling that the true master of this nest was finally reacting to his presence. The others watched from afar, terrified by the carnage and desperately debating whether they should report the mission as a failure. Despite the danger, they couldn't help but feel a strange mix of fear and admiration for the kid who had walked into the jaws of death. As the dust settled, the mystery of the Beetle King's location became the only thing left to resolve in the heart of the mountain. Staring down into the dark abyss of the cavern, the young tamer quickly analyzed the terrifying mission details, realizing the deadly beetle infestation had started just a week ago. He deduced that the swarm's fearsome leader must have evolved recently, making it an incredibly dangerous, unpredictable threat. Suddenly, a blood-curdling roar echoed through the cave. Shaking the very ground beneath his feet, his system immediately flashed a blaring red warning, identifying the beast as a massive rank 4 death-toll striker. Panic momentarily gripped him as he realized the sheer, overwhelming power of the monster, but the thought of losing out on his massive paycheck quickly anchored him. Determined to secure the bounty, he readied himself for battle, betting everything on turning this terrifying risk into an absolute fortune. But before he could even make his first move, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield as a heavy figure violently slammed into the earth. The dust cleared to reveal a giant rock monster, leaving him completely bewildered as to why another tamer was intruding on his personal hunt. A cocky voice echoed from the shadows, arrogantly commanding him to stand back and leave the real fighting to the adults. The stranger strutted forward with an infuriating smirk, dismissing the dangerous cavern as a place completely unfit for an amateur. The death-toll striker hissed aggressively at the new arrivals, its massive jaws clicking with lethal, untamed intent. Annoyed by the blatant interruption, the young tamer tried to step up and claim his target, but the arrogant stranger completely ignored him. Turning his back to the terrifying boss monster, the newcomer oozed completely unearned, reckless confidence. With a smug grin, he proudly introduced himself as Luo Da, boasting about his prestigious status as an elite bronze beastmaster. The impressive title instantly caught the attention of a nearby group of stragglers, their eyes widening in absolute awe. A girl from the group eagerly stepped forward, practically begging for permission to tag along and watch a true professional at work. Basking in the blind adoration, Luo Da flashed a charming smile, graciously allowing the girl to witness his so-called greatness firsthand. However, he sharply glared at the other two trembling guys in the group, coldly declaring that cowards like them weren't even qualified to follow in his footsteps. Meanwhile, deep within the ice-covered sections of the cavern, the frozen remains of the beast's defeated minions shattered into a million pieces. The young tamer's previous ruthless slaughter had not gone unnoticed by the depths of his mysterious system. A notification suddenly chimed in his mind, congratulating him for achieving the incredibly rare Beast Slayer title and rewarding him with a massive stash of points. Among the legendary loot was a rare explosive seed card, a consumable item capable of drastically boosting a pet's raw power in a deadly pinch. He stared at the screen in pure disbelief, thrilled beyond words that wiping out the swarm had yielded such insanely overpowered rewards. But the good news didn't stop there. His loyal ice crystal spirit had also instantly leveled up, reaching a terrifying rank 3. A confident, predatory smirk spread across his face. This chaotic hunt was turning out to be more profitable than he ever could have imagined. Suddenly, the shadows in the cavern shifted violently as glowing red eyes locked onto the intruding humans. The death-toll striker launched a devastating horn strike, tearing through the darkness with speed that defied its massive size. Crimson energy violently slashed through the air, completely obliterating the ancient stone pillars in its path. The sheer explosive force of the shockwave forced everyone to brace themselves against the violent impact. Despite the absolute chaos, the young tamer remained completely unfazed, whispering to his ice spirit that they were finally ready to ascend to the next stage. Looking down from a high, shadowy vantage point, he noted that the true boss was finally making its grand, terrifying entrance. His sharp eyes tracked the subtle, rhythmic tremors in the ground, calculating the monster's exact, deadly position. A massive, razor-sharp claw violently pierced through the solid rock floor, dragging a monstrous, heavy body upward. The beast's glowing green eyes locked onto the humans, radiating an overwhelming, suffocating aura of death. Even the fiercely confident young tamer couldn't help but curse under his breath as the colossal size of the armored bug was finally fully revealed. Seeing his slight reaction, Luida scoffed, suddenly recognizing the kid as the famous apprentice who had somehow cleared the superior difficulty trial. He offered a condescending, backhanded compliment, admitting the kid had some minor skills, but claiming it still wasn't nearly enough for this brutal tier of combat. Annoyed by the constant, arrogant belittling, the young tamer glared daggers at Luo Da, silently daring him to back up his big words. The bystander girl completely ignored the thick tension in the air, still obsessing over the bronze beastmaster's imposing, heroic presence. But the monstrous beetle had absolutely no patience for human bickering, lunging forward with a blood-curdling screech. The death-toll striker descended like a waking nightmare, its massive, crushing mandibles snapping violently toward their heads. Stepping confidently in front of the panicked group, Luo Da boldly declared that he would personally show the kid the massive, insurmountable gap in their power. He casually warned the others to stay out of the way, fully intent on monopolizing the absolute glory of the kill for himself. With a fearless, battle-hungry cry, he locked his unblinking gaze onto the descending insectoid monstrosity. The girl and the terrified stragglers watched in sheer, unadulterated awe, treating the deadly, life-threatening encounter like a spectacular theatrical show. The colossal beetle hit the cavern floor with a deafening crash, kicking up a massive blinding storm of dust and rock. Completely unfazed by the brutal shockwave, the bronze beastmaster stood his ground, fully confident in his overwhelming, impenetrable defense. On his strict command, his massive rock monster stepped forward, acting as an unyielding, living shield against the beast's relentless charge. Huge boulders rained down from the fragile cavern ceiling as the sheer, terrifying pressure of the monster's aura destabilized the very cave itself. The rocky titan easily deflected the falling debris, completely unfazed by the chaotic, crumbling environment around them. With a devastating heavy swing, the rock monster retaliated, violently smashing its fists into the cavern floor to create a massive shockwave. Luo Da confidently turned back to the terrified girl, arrogantly assuring her that as long as he was there, she was perfectly safe from harm. But the death-toll striker was far from defeated. Its glowing eyes flared with renewed, venomous rage as it prepared for a deadly counterattack. Before the bug could strike, the rock monster lunged forward, fiercely grappling with the giant insect in a brutal ground-shaking test of raw strength. Just as the titanic struggle reached a desperate stalemate, a sudden freezing chill aggressively swept across the entire battlefield. Without a second of hesitation, the young tamer unleashed his pet's signature move, magically summoning massive Arctic chains out of thin air. The freezing chains immediately wrapped around the colossal beetle, perfectly locking it in place and leaving it completely vulnerable for a killing blow. Luo Da's jaw practically hit the floor as he stared at the young apprentice. Utterly shocked and humiliated by the unexpected display of advanced magic, he couldn't fathom how a mere rookie was capable of comprehending and flawlessly executing such a high-level, complex spirit technique. Realizing the perfect, undeniable opening had been created, the rock monster's heavy fists suddenly ignited with blazing, explosive energy. Drawing upon the absolute terrifying limits of its rank 4 strength, the fiery titan prepared to end the exhausting fight once and for all. The arrogant bronze beastmaster could only watch in stunned silence, finally realizing he had completely, foolishly underestimated the young tamer's true potential. The rock monster leaped incredibly high into the dark air, gathering massive, unstoppable momentum for its ultimate attack. Its glowing molten fists hurtled downward through the cavern like a pair of devastating, apocalyptic meteors. With a deafening, echoing roar, it unleashed a massive earthquake slam, striking directly onto the helpless chain beetle. The once terrifying death-toll striker was instantly crushed beneath the overwhelming, explosive impact, ending the battle and shifting the entire dynamic of the cavern in a single heartbeat. The colossal death-toll striker let out an ear-piercing hiss as its body mutated, entering a terrifying berserk state. The system immediately flashed a dire, warning the beast's combat power had skyrocketed to a deadly rank 4, stage 3. The veteran tamer grit his teeth, warning that a monster at this level was completely out of their league and nearly impossible to deal with. But instead of retreating, the air temperature plummeted as pure ice mana began to condense. The tiny ice crystal spirit floated forward, completely unfazed by the monstrous threat looming over them. With a swift motion, it manifested a razor-sharp blade of pure frost. Staring at the system prompt, the young tamer calculated his odds. 60 seconds of berserk time with his spirit techniques, he knew he could hold out. Provoked by their defiance, the giant arachnid roared and launched its massive body forward. Unblinking, the boy commanded his spirit to unleash Arctic chains. The little spirit thrust its hands out, unleashing a torrent of freezing energy directly at the incoming monstrosity. The blast connected with a heavy impact, halting the beast's charge in its tracks. But the sheer kinetic force of the monster's assault sent the giant rock golem skidding backward. Thick clouds of dust and pulverized stone filled the cavern as the heavy monster collapsed. When the smoke cleared, the veteran's once mighty rock monster was completely buried under the rubble, taken out of the fight. Watching his pet's performance, the boy realized the ice crystal spirit's recent level up had drastically multiplied its power, though he knew keeping it under control would be risky. He firmly warned his spirit to carefully manage its energy output so it wouldn't exhaust itself. In a blinding flash of golden light, he unleashed a brutal spirit impact. Throwing a devastating mana-infused punch, he declared he would beat the monster until it dropped. The concussive wave of frost and force slammed into the death-toll striker, pushing it to its absolute limits. As the elemental energy flared, it felt like a scene straight out of ancient legends back when humanity allied with the 5 mythical elemental beasts to end the world's chaos. Those legendary creatures had vanished long ago, but the raw power radiating from the boy's spirit felt strangely, dangerously familiar. With 30 seconds left on the berserk timer, his fist ignited with golden spirit power once more. His eyes went cold as he announced it was finally time to crush this bug for good. The sheer pressure of his aura forced the veteran tamer and the girl to brace themselves against the fierce winds. As the berserk monster struggled against the overwhelming suppression, the veteran finally understood why this kid's pet was so absurdly strong. The girl could only watch in stunned silence, completely breathless. Refusing to go down easily, the beast shrieked, desperately gathering its remaining frenzied strength to break free. But the ice crystal spirit was already one step ahead, chanting the incantation for Frost Nova. An absolute zero explosion erupted across the cavern, freezing the very air itself. The massive spike of ice violently launched the giant insect backward, smashing its heavy armor. Terrified for the boy's life, the veteran screamed at him to stop, warning that overdrawing his spirit power would kill him. The boy didn't even flinch, casually checking his system panel to reveal he had only used half of his reserves. The veteran's jaw practically hit the floor. He couldn't comprehend how a kid had such a monstrous mana pull. Hope finally returned to the girl's eyes as she realized they might actually survive this nightmare. Jagged glaciers of ice completely encased the battlefield, trapping the beast in a frozen prison. But a second later, the ice began to aggressively crack and splinter. With a deafening shatter, the death-tall striker broke free, its armored shell battered but unbroken. Desperate to help, the veteran commanded his heavily damaged rock monster to grab the bug and hold it down. The beast ruthlessly retaliated, violently slicing into the golem's rocky exterior with its razor-sharp legs. Panic set in once again. The girl begged to run, while the terrified veteran agreed, suggesting they retreat and spare its life today. Yet, standing firmly between them and the furious monster, the boy didn't take a single step back. "No. You go first," he ordered. "I'm going to stay and kill him." The veteran froze, staring at the back of the young tamer in absolute disbelief. He thought the kid had completely lost his mind to try and solo a berserk monster, but a violently swirling vortex of freezing mana answered his doubts. The little ice crystal spirit's eyes glowed with intense pink light as it initiated a massive strengthening buff. The two bystanders could only watch in awe, wondering who this terrifying kid really was. Moving in perfect synchronization, the boy and his spirit fired off another massive, dual-layered spirit impact. The monstrous insect took the attack head-on, its armored face cracking under the extreme pressure. The sheer momentum of the clash sent shockwaves tearing through the cavern, knocking the remnants of the rock monster aside. Gathering the very last of his energy, the boy locked his eyes onto the struggling beast, standing his ground. Driven by pure primal rage, the death-toll striker lunged straight for him. Its razor-sharp mandibles snapped wildly, mere inches away from tearing the boy apart. Without a drop of fear, he commanded the Arctic chains to strike once more. The veteran screamed in desperation, calling him a crazy brat for trying to face a monster that even a giant rock golem couldn't scratch. But the boy just smirked, calmly reminding the older tamer of their earlier conversation about advanced enhancement techniques. The veteran blinked, completely confused by the sudden question in the middle of a life-or-death battle. Before anyone could process what was happening, the boy summoned an incredibly rare item, the explosive seed card. He crushed the card, instantly enveloping his own body in a blinding golden aura of ultimate power. That massive surge of energy seamlessly transferred into the ice crystal spirit, pushing its power far beyond its limits for one final world-shattering strike. Sweating bullets, the veteran tamer can hardly believe that this rookie actually knows the high-ranking official. The dust finally settles in the canyon, revealing the chaotic aftermath of their desperate battle for survival. Stepping into the ruins, Lord he casually confirms that the highly dangerous mission was somehow completed without a single casualty. His sharp eyes immediately lock onto the massive, lifeless carcass of the fallen boss monster. Analyzing the sheer scale of the beast, he realizes this terrifying creature had reached an overwhelming rank 4. Knowing the rookie's pet is only rank 2, the official naturally assumes the veteran must have carried the entire fight as the main vanguard. He quietly ponders the catastrophic failure of the association's threat evaluation system that nearly got these kids killed. Lindsay stays completely quiet, perfectly happy to let the official draw his own conclusions. Sensing a golden opportunity, the veteran quickly pulls our boy aside for a highly secretive negotiation. Desperate to boost his own rank, he frantically offers his entire half-year savings just to steal the credit for the kill. He even throws in the full mission reward and promises a massive personal favor if Lindsay simply plays along. The exhausted little ice spirit waits patiently, completely trusting her master to make the right call. With a confident smirk, Lindsay instantly realizes this is the absolute best deal he could ever ask for. Before he can even formulate an answer, a glowing blue system interface violently erupts into his vision. He just scored the legendary first kill achievement on a boss-tier monster. The rewards are absolutely insane, granting him the exact rare evolution materials he so desperately needs. Realizing the system just handed him a free ticket to unlimited power, he eagerly accepts the veteran's shady deal. The terrifying memory of the intense deathmatch flashes through his mind in a split second. A blinding eruption of pure elemental energy tears through the battlefield once again. The devastating strike obliterates the massive insect, leaving nothing but absolute destruction in its wake. Thick plumes of smoke continue to pour from the monster's violently scorched remains. Stepping forward, the high-ranking official formally bows his head in a sincere apology for the deadly mix-up. Playing the role of the humble rookie, Lindsay casually brushes off the near-death experience as if it was nothing. The official commends the veteran for supposedly putting his own life on the line to protect the younger tamers. To sweep this massive blunder under the rug, he announces a hefty compensation of 100,000 yuan. The two boys exchange a quick, shocked glance as the massive financial windfall falls right into their laps. Wrapping up the conversation, Lord He states he needs to confiscate the boss's corpse for immediate laboratory research. But the young girl furiously steps in, entirely offended that the veteran is stealing her savior's hard-earned glory. Ignoring her outburst, the veteran bows deeply to Lindsay, swearing he will carry this massive debt to his grave. The girl just stands there, completely baffled by the bizarre secret pact unfolding right in front of her. She quickly turns her attention back to Lindsay, desperately hoping they can form a party again in the near future. With a charming smile, he encourages her to keep training hard so they can conquer higher-ranked dungeons together. Suddenly, a hand effortlessly grips the dense, armor-plated shell of the dead beast. Without breaking a single sweat, Lord He casually walks away carrying the gigantic, multi-ton carcass on his back. Lindsay's eyes widen in sheer terror at the monstrous physical strength required to pull off such a feat. As they finally hike out of the wasteland, our boy mentally calculates his absolutely ridiculous haul for the day. Not only did he secure a mountain of cash, but he also gained an extremely valuable favor from a seasoned fighter. The glowing system prompt continues to hover in his vision, a beautiful reminder of his epic boss takedown. Overjoyed that they actually survived, his teammate celebrates their massive victory like he is an absolute god. The explosive combat energy finally fades, causing the tiny ice spirit to shrink down as pure exhaustion takes over. Lindsay gently scoops up his drained companion, extremely proud of the terrifying power she just unleashed. Watching from the sidelines, the veteran is utterly speechless at how much profit this rookie just casually walked away with. Glancing back, the official is fully aware that this money isn't just a simple polite apology. Lindsay completely understands the political game, knowing this is pure hush money to protect the association's fragile reputation. But the official sees it as a brilliant investment, realizing this young prodigy hasn't even contracted his second beast yet. Securing the unwavering loyalty of a future powerhouse is easily worth every single penny to the higher-ups. Right on cue, Lindsay's phone violently buzzes with the greatest notification a guy could ever ask for. The massive six-figure transfer has officially cleared into his heavily depleted bank account. Before they can even properly celebrate, a terrifying shadow suddenly engulfs the entire group. A monstrous giant eagle drops from the sky, its razor-sharp talons slamming violently into the rocky earth. The sheer wind pressure from its massive wings nearly knocks the entire party right off their feet. Lord He doesn't even flinch, casually stepping right into the terrifying storm to mount his majestic ride. Adjusting his coat collar, he suddenly exudes an overwhelming aura of absolute, crushing authority. The girl's jaw hits the floor as she finally connects the dots to who they were just talking to. She realizes they were casually chatting with a legendary silver-ranked Beastmaster this entire time. The trio is left completely frozen in awe as the titan of the tamer world coldly prepares for takeoff. He extended his hand, a mixture of exhaustion and relief washing over him as he checked on his companions. A newly acquired little stone monster sat on the floor, blinking in complete confusion at its new surroundings. But the peaceful moment didn't last, as Snowball immediately flared up, her eye glowing with pure, unadulterated menace. Watching the little ice spirit's hostile reaction, he couldn't help but sigh, noting that despite the danger they'd faced, her fiery temper was recovering perfectly. Without a second of hesitation, Snowball launched a vicious, frosty strike. The poor stone creature trembled, completely defenseless against the sudden burst of aggression. The impact sent a shockwave through the room, proving that the little ice spirit was not one to share her territory. As he watched the chaos, his mind drifted back to the so-called experts who had labeled Snowball an F-class failure, realizing just how utterly clueless the Beast Taming Association truly was. That same realization had hit him hard earlier that day at the pet store, when his system suddenly chimed, detecting a king-grade hidden evolutionary route. He had stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes locking onto a seemingly worthless creature, overwhelmed by a sudden sense of familiarity. Sitting behind the glass was a basic, bottom-tier stone monster, the kind of pet most tamers wouldn't even look twice at. The system displayed its standard boring evolutionary path into a giant rock monster, a solid but completely uninspiring defensive tank. The saleswoman had quickly scooped it up, completely misreading his intense gaze, politely asking if he actually intended to waste resources evolving such a weak creature. Caught off guard, he awkwardly waved his hands, laughing nervously as he lied through his teeth, claiming it was just a simple gift. Internally, he was sweating bullets, painfully aware that the rare evolution materials required would cost a fortune compared to the cheap pet itself. Still, he confidently stepped up to the counter, ready to finalize the transaction that would secure his future. With a bright flash of golden light, the heavy stone creature was seamlessly compressed into a compact sealed pearl. He securely grabbed the bag containing his new investment, casually telling the attendant that he needed to browse for a proper pet beast. Following her lead, he walked up the sleek steps of the high-end store, ready to see what else they had to offer. The upper floor was a massive showroom, lined with dozens of exotic creatures waiting to be claimed by wealthy tamers. He carefully inspected the enclosures, scanning past a strange floating eye and a sturdy wooden creature. His gaze drifted over a rare bone snake, analyzing every single option available to him. But his true prize was already in his hand, and with a surge of energy, he finalized the bond. The system chimed with a successful contract notification, rewarding him with a massive boost of achievement points. By the time he returned home, the city was already covered in the dark, quiet embrace of night. He sat comfortably on his living room floor, placing down a couple of feeding bowls for his companions. With a swift command, a bright blue portal materialized right in front of him. The little stone monster materialized, and he immediately knew his first priority was maxing out its growth rate to unlock its true potential. In his mind's eye, he could already see its terrifying final form, a jagged, shadowy titan rising from the earth. It was the perfect strategy. Snowball was an absolute powerhouse of burst damage and crowd control, making her the perfect mage, while this new beast would become an unstoppable frontline warrior. Back in the store, he had stared down at the unassuming rock, knowing he was about to make the steal of a lifetime. The saleswoman had enthusiastically hyped it up, praising its durability and cheap evolution costs, urging him not to hesitate. Suppressing a massive grin, he smoothly agreed, sealing the deal without a second thought. But back in the present, the peaceful training session was violently interrupted by another aggressive clash. Snowball stood triumphantly, brandishing a frosty blade she had conjured, glaring down at her new rocky roommate. With a swift, merciless motion, she swung the icy weapon through the air. The poor little rock monster flinched, completely bullied by the overwhelmingly powerful ice spirit. He buried his face in his hand, groaning in frustration at the absolute headache of managing two vastly different personalities. His thoughts scrambled back to the store's displays, recalling the unevolvable bone snake he had passed on, and the equally unimpressive mushroom child sitting right next to it. He remembered pausing at a fiery floating spirit, a flame imp that radiated intense heat. The saleswoman had quickly praised his good eye, noting that it was a rare elite B-grade beast, offered at a premium price. She enthusiastically explained that the hefty price tag even included a batch of basic evolution materials to get him started, but the memory was shattered as another violent tremor shook his living room. The little stone creature was sent skidding across the floor, desperately trying to escape Snowball's wrath. Sighing, he pointed at a small dish filled with expensive, high-grade undead powder, urging the rock to eat. Instead of eating, the stubborn little creature furiously shook its body, flat out refusing the meal. His eyes went wide with disbelief, shouting out in sheer frustration as he realized his new god-tier beast was a picky eater. The stone monster aggressively stomped its little legs, throwing a full-blown tantrum right there on the rug. He slumped back in defeat, staring at the system screen, realizing he had to brute force the upgrade if he wanted any progress. Channeling his gathered achievement points, a massive pillar of light erupted from his palm, enveloping the creature. The system chimed instantly. 220 points consumed, pushing the beast perfectly to its maximum growth rate. With its body now primed for evolution, he pushed the rare materials closer, encouraging it to finally consume the massive investment. Feeling the sudden surge of power within itself, the little rock finally noticed the glowing materials with newfound interest. His mind flashed back to the street outside the store, remembering how he initially thought his budget would only buy a decent B-grade pet. He had confidently strode toward the brightly lit entrance of the high-end taming shop, ready to spend his hard-earned cash. The moment he had walked in, the elegant saleswoman had greeted him with a perfect, welcoming smile, but nothing she could have offered compared to the legendary rock god evolution path the system had revealed to him. A confident, knowing smirk had crossed his face as all the pieces of the puzzle fell perfectly into place. He vividly remembered a famous tamer's legendary beast, realizing with absolute shock that it had evolved from this exact, pathetic little rock. But while that famous tamer had settled for the most basic, common evolutionary route, he was about to awaken an ancient, unstoppable god. A heavy, suffocating energy suddenly fills the room as a dark summoning circle violently activates. The protagonist stands perfectly calm at the epicenter of the erupting black light. From the swirling shadows, a pair of menacing blood-red eyes pierce through the darkness. The dark energy solidifies into a massive, imposing humanoid figure radiating raw aggression. Standing tall, the newly formed rock ghost looks like an unstoppable, heavily armored juggernaut. The system confirms its terrifying stats, revealing it as a highly destructive rank 2 beast with massive growth potential. Without warning, the beast lunges forward, its killing intent completely untamed and wild. Suddenly, the apartment door flies open as his neighbor bursts in, furious and screaming for him to stop the noise. But the neighbor's anger instantly evaporates into pure terror as he realizes he's staring down a literal monster. Realizing his new beast is terrifying his guest, the protagonist quickly steps in to defuse the dangerously tense situation. The rock ghost slowly turns its glowing, hostile gaze directly onto the trembling neighbor. Looming over the man, the beast's oppressive aura makes it crystal clear that one wrong move will be his last. Sweating profusely, the terrified neighbor stammers out a pathetic apology, desperately trying to back out of the room. The protagonist flashes a calm, unfazed smile, fully enjoying the sudden shift in power dynamics. But his smugness shatters instantly when the neighbor suddenly screams out a demand for 300,000 in damages. Gaining a brief burst of greedy courage, the neighbor aggressively insists the money must be paid within exactly 3 days. The rock ghost silently steps up right behind its master, casting a massive, terrifying shadow over the doorway. It slowly cracks its stone knuckles, delivering an unspoken death threat that hangs heavily in the air. The neighbor's face drains of all color as his brief flash of bravery completely disappears. Meanwhile, shivering in the corner, the protagonist's tiny ice spirit feels completely overshadowed and depressed by the giant stone beast. Seeing his little elemental curled up and crying out of pure frustration pulls heavily at its master's heartstrings. Deciding it's time to level the playing field, he pumps the little spirit's growth rate straight to absolute maximum. A blinding, crystalline light erupts from the tiny creature as an incredible transformation sequence begins. Even the aggressive rock ghost is forced to shield its eyes from the overwhelming surge of raw power. Consuming a massive amount of high-tier evolutionary materials, the room's temperature plummets instantly. From the freezing mist, a breathtakingly beautiful and incredibly powerful snow maiden steps forward. The system immediately registers her massive power spike, confirming she has reached an astonishing rank 4. Thick, heavy blizzard clouds begin to spontaneously form right inside the cramped apartment. The rock ghost looks around in sheer confusion as its stony body begins to freeze over from the sudden weather change. With a single thought, the snow maiden summons an impenetrable wall of absolute zero ice. The overwhelming freezing pressure forces the heavy stone beast to slide backwards against its will. Furious at being pushed around by the new arrival, the rock ghost begins to emanate a violent, rebellious aura. The system flashes a critical notification, detailing the complex evolution conditions of his ice elemental. His eyes narrowing with cold authority, the protagonist decides it is time to establish absolute dominance over his ranks. The room crackles with immense energy as the evolutionary power completely settles into the Ice Queen. Just as an all-out beast brawl is about to destroy the apartment, a furious knocking shatters the tension. The protagonist swings the door open, already exhausted by the constant interruptions to his training. His neighbor is back, completely red in the face, screaming about the massive crater left in his living room wall. Trying to play it off, the protagonist offers a sheepish smile and a half-hearted apology for the destruction. But the neighbor isn't having it, furiously holding up 3 fingers to demand heavy compensation for both the wall and his shattered mental health. Ignoring the screaming neighbor, the true danger lies inside as the 2 powerful beasts stare each other down. The rock ghost lets out a guttural roar, completely ignoring its master's previous commands to stand down. Driven by pure violent instinct, the heavy brawler recklessly lunges toward the elegant Ice Queen. Instead of panicking, the protagonist calmly watches, knowing exactly how this one-sided fight is going to end. Above them, the room's ceiling is entirely replaced by a terrifying array of razor-sharp ice spears. The rock ghost pauses mid-charge, staring up at the deadly trap it just walked straight into. Refusing to back down, the stone monster's eyes flare with an intense, bloody red light. The protagonist yells at his beast, giving it one last chance to stop its completely suicidal assault. But the rock ghost violently slams its fist down, causing massive jagged earth spikes to erupt from the floorboards. The apartment violently shakes as an explosion of dust and rubble engulfs the entire living room. Tearing right through the dust cloud, the heavy beast launches a devastating, full-power strike, but its fist slams directly into the Snow Maiden's crystal mirror, completely halting its massive momentum. A destructive shockwave ripples through the room as the kinetic force is violently rebounded right back into the attacker. Completely crushed by the counter-impact, the massive stone monster is forced hard onto its knees. The protagonist casually strolls up to his broken beast, his voice dripping with terrifying authority. Staring down at the monster, he promises that if it ever disobeys again, he will not hesitate to slaughter it where it stands. A heavy drop of sweat rolls down the beast's face as it finally realizes the horrifying gap in power. Trembling violently, the once arrogant monster bows its head until it touches the ruined floor. With the hierarchy firmly established, the deadly floating ice spears silently dissolve into thin air. Kneeling in total submission, the untamed beast has finally learned exactly who holds its leash. Tension thickens in the courtyard as the elite students gather, urgently warning their class leader not to hold back against the fierce competition. The girls rally firmly behind their representative, their eyes locked on the overwhelming path ahead as they prepare to defend their school's honor. Meanwhile, Lindsay flashes a confident thumbs up, completely unfazed by the heavy, nerve-wracking atmosphere surrounding them. An official announcement rings out across the plaza, declaring the arrival of the hopeful contenders from Pinghai No. 1 Middle School. An arrogant rival immediately scoffs, loudly dismissing the newcomers as nothing more than a bunch of weak, uncultured hillbillies. It was a bitter reality that Pinghai City was deeply remote, severely lacking the endless resources of massive dominant hubs like Changsha and Kimping. The Pinghai students immediately tense up, feeling the stinging, humiliating weight of their heavy underdog status. But as they look up at the breathtaking architecture of the academy, their doubts are instantly replaced by sheer awe, knowing admission here would change their lives forever. The sprawling grand courtyard is already swarming with the brightest, most dangerous young talents from across the entire region. Refusing to be intimidated by the elite crowd, Lindsay confidently steps forward, calmly asking the massive gathering to make way. Suddenly, another powerhouse faction makes their grand entrance, announcing the arrival of 17 prodigies from the legendary Kimping High School. Every heavy step they take across the pavement radiates an overwhelming sense of absolute superiority and raw strength. Right on their heels, 21 formidable students from Changsha Middle School officially check in, instantly swelling the ranks of the already fierce competition. The arrogant silver-haired boy doubles down on his insults, boldly declaring to the crowd that not a single student from Pinghai will survive the trials. Unable to hold back her seething rage, a pink-haired Pinghai student snaps back, fiercely defending her territory against the blatant disrespect. The towering, heavily muscled competitor ignores the petty bickering, quietly turning to ask his teammate who she thinks actually has what it takes. Shinji casually blows a bubblegum bubble, her sharp, calculating eyes scanning the sea of competitors to measure their true threat level. Her gaze lands heavily on the silver-haired prodigy, whose dead calm demeanor hides a terrifying, unshakable level of confidence. The murmurs of the anxious crowd suddenly die down as a bizarre, suffocating energy fills the crisp morning air. A strange mystical spirit beast perches quietly nearby, watching the massive gathering of students with an unnervingly high level of intelligence. Without a single second of warning, a blindingly fast figure dashes right into the center of the plaza, leaving a trail of pure afterimages. Landing flawlessly, the man flashes a wild, approving grin, loudly praising the students for their fiery, aggressive energy. He confidently introduces himself as Chin Hei, the strict, unforgiving instructor in charge of this year's brutal registration process. He starts by politely congratulating them for surviving the preliminaries, but his cheerful smile quickly darkens into a sinister stare. He bluntly warns the crowd that the Academy's entrance exam is a living nightmare, completely incomparable to the basic childlike trials they just passed. Cold panic instantly grips the courtyard as the weaker students realize their previous low-difficulty victories mean absolutely nothing in this hellish place. The instructor then drops a horrifying bombshell. This year's brutal exam carries a staggering 80% elimination rate. As the sheer crushing gravity of the situation sinks in, a bold classmate leans in uncomfortably close to Lindsay's face. He instantly breaks out in a nervous sweat, completely caught off guard by her sudden, overwhelming proximity. Nearby, his friends watch the bizarre interaction in stunned silence, utterly speechless at the intense tension. The magnificent Jiangning Academy stands tall under the glowing sun, a glorious fortress of dreams that only a tiny fraction of them will ever enter. Looking at the sprawling, pristine pathways leading to the entrance, the harsh reality of the grueling path ahead finally hits them. But the journey to get here hadn't exactly been smooth just days prior. Lindsay had been completely zoning out beside his icy companion. A frantic, furious phone call from Guanning had snapped him back to reality, demanding to know if he had completely forgotten their departure time. Pure panic had washed over his face as he stared at his screen, realizing he had entirely lost track of his critical schedule. The sprawling, futuristic metropolis of Jiangning City had felt like an entirely different, intimidating world to the small-town kids. Back at the local terminal, the rest of the Academy hopefuls had been waiting impatiently for their long-distance transport. Guanning had frantically waved him down from across the empty street, massively relieved that he had actually bothered to. He nervously scratched his head, embarrassingly apologizing for being so buried in his daily grinding tasks that he completely missed her messages. Thankfully, she let his massive blunder slide, flashing him a bright, understanding smile that instantly eased his guilt. He quickly changed the subject, excitedly hyping up his own beast's recent, powerful evolution to reassure her that they were truly ready for war. As they finally breached the massive borders of Jiangning City, the towering, crystal skyscrapers left them in absolute awe. Their transport bus carefully navigated the winding, lush mountain roads, carrying the young hopefuls closer and closer to their ultimate death. Staring out the grand window, Guanning couldn't help but marvel at the breathtaking, intimidating scenery of their new battleground. But behind Lindsay's composed exterior was the dark reality of his brutally exhausting training, which had left his bedroom in a state of total devastation. He had spent his final morning sleeping like a rock, completely drained of all physical energy, with his loyal beasts resting heavily by his side. When his ridiculously bright alarm clock finally went off, It was a harsh, agonizing return to reality. An upbeat, blaring pop idol song was the only force on earth capable of waking him from his coma like slumber. Before they had departed, their proud homeroom teacher had addressed them on the red carpet, reminding them they were the absolute, undisputed elites of Pinghai. With complete, unwavering faith in her students, she promised to eagerly await the glorious news of their inevitable triumph. The students had roared in absolute unison, their young hearts burning with a desperate determination to prove their worth to the world. The teacher had looked directly at Lindsay with glowing eyes, placing the entire, heavy hope of their struggling school squarely on his shoulders. As the bus finally carried them toward the academy gates, the heavy tension in the air was palpable. Some of his classmates had angrily muttered under their breath that morning, furious that his laziness had almost cost them the most important day of their lives. Completely unbothered by their bitter complaints, Lindsay had casually strolled toward the group, his hands stuffed deeply in his pockets. But he couldn't dodge the wrath of his fiercely loyal friend, who instantly greeted his tardiness with a comical, flying punch right to the face. Rubbing his bruised cheek, he nonchalantly blamed his intense fatigue, casually changing the subject to see if she was keeping up with her spirit techniques. His teacher had given him a deeply observant, silent look, mentally noting the strange, heavy aura of power now surrounding him. Guan Ning simply tilted her head, deeply confused by his unusually calm, mysterious demeanor in the face of such a massive trial. And from a distance, the sharp-eyed Jingyi blew another bubble, her instincts screaming that there was something dangerously hidden beneath the Pinghai boy's laid-back attitude. The rumors of a local genius were already spreading like wildfire through the nervous crowd. Just 2 months ago, this terrifying prodigy had flawlessly cleared the high-level apprenticeship assessment. He stood tall among his peers, radiating the overwhelming confidence of someone who had never tasted defeat. His contracted companion was a deadly poison ivy monster, an incredibly rare plant-type creature that had already evolved to a staggering rank 3. The surrounding students gasped in sheer disbelief, their minds failing to process how a mere high schooler could wield such a monstrously high-ranked beast. But it wasn't just raw talent at play. His absurdly wealthy family had poured an endless mountain of high-level evolutionary materials into his training. For the average students desperately clinging to their weak rank 1 companions, this massive gap in power felt utterly crushing. She lowered her gaze, the harsh and unforgiving reality of the competition finally sinking in. Even her prized fierce magic bird was desperately lagging behind at rank 2 stage 7, leaving a seemingly insurmountable chasm between her and the true elites. But the wealthy prodigy wasn't the only looming threat. As another student nervously pointed toward a girl with twin ponytails standing nearby, the crowd erupted into another frantic frenzy the moment the words dual element left his mouth. She repeated the rare classification in pure awe, knowing exactly how impossibly dangerous those mutated beasts were to tame. It was a fearsome rock ghost, a deadly combination of ghost and rock attributes, born only in the most lethal, chaotic environments. He listened to the fearful chatter in complete silence, coldly calculating the strength of his future opponents. To the observing students, attempting to develop a dual attribute beast seemed like a high-risk gamble with an astronomical payoff. He smirked to himself, fully aware of the sheer, unstoppable power such a creature possessed. As the panicked murmurs finally died down, the supervising teacher sternly instructed everyone to check into the academy hotel and rest for the grueling entrance exams. Some arrogant competitors casually dismissed the students from Pinghai No. 1 middle school, foolishly writing them off as a lower-tier threat. He completely ignored the blinding arrogance around him, blending seamlessly into the bustling sea of candidates. A smug, punchable smile stretched across a rival student's face, fully convinced of his own untouchable superiority. The whispers quickly shifted to Guo Xinyi, a notorious troublemaker who had supposedly contracted a rank 2 stage 8 young dragon in just a single month. The students finally gathered in the dining hall, still aggressively debating how a rookie could possibly train a beast so rapidly. He leaned heavily on his hand, completely exhausted by the endless stream of baseless gossip and paranoid speculation. Across the room, a brilliant pink eye suddenly locked onto her target. The eccentric girl struck a playful, flashy pose, clearly thriving on the massive amount of attention she drew, but he just stared back with a deadpan expression, entirely unfazed by her hyperactive display. With the exhausting formalities finally over, the instructor officially dismissed the weary candidates to enjoy their much-needed free time. The starving students instantly cheered, their exhausted eyes lighting up at the promise of a warm, filling meal. They flooded into the massive academy canteen, eager to take full advantage of the free food provided to the competitors. The long wooden tables quickly filled up as bitter rival schools sat side by side, silently sizing each other up. From across the crowded room, a highly distracted student completely lost his focus on the upcoming, life-altering exams. He drooled shamelessly, openly admiring a beautiful girl sitting at a nearby table. His eyes were locked completely onto her figure, throwing all sense of basic decency out the window. The pink-haired girl giggled playfully, thoroughly amused by the ridiculous scene unfolding in front of her. Meanwhile, he was solely focused on his own survival, aggressively devouring a massive piece of meat. He snatched up another chicken leg without a second of hesitation, rapidly fueling his body for the intense battles ahead. A glorious mountain of food sat before him, and he happily chewed away, completely ignoring the useless high school drama swirling around him. Sitting directly across from him, she suddenly blushed a deep, furious crimson, completely flustered by a teasing comment. Her heart raced uncontrollably as someone loudly joked that the two of them looked like a disgustingly sweet couple. The drooling student's friend violently shushed him, furious that he was publicly bringing shame to their prestigious Kinping High School. A handsome upperclassman glared intensely at the table, burning with bitter jealousy over the unwarranted attention the newcomer was receiving. The lighthearted atmosphere instantly vanished as a confident stranger purposely approached their tight-knit group. It was Zhou Sheng, stepping up to their table with a calm, highly calculating smile plastered on his face. He immediately raised his hands in a mock surrender, smoothly insisting he was only there to make a few friends. She wasn't having a single second of it, bluntly telling him to turn around and leave since they had zero intelligence to share. He just laughed off the harsh rejection, rubbing the back of his head with an infuriatingly easygoing charm. Nearby students nervously turned their heads, carefully watching the tense verbal standoff unfold. Refusing to take no for an answer, he boldly asked if he could take the empty seat directly opposite them. She narrowed her eyes in deep, protective suspicion, knowing perfectly well that guys like him only cared about extracting valuable intel. The massive dining hall continued to hum with background chatter as the heavy standoff anchored their small table. He officially introduced himself, finally dropping his overly friendly facade to reveal the sharp, predatory gaze of a master information broker. Taking a seat without bothering to wait for permission, he leaned in close with a dangerously confident grin. Staring directly into the boy's eyes, he casually asked if the rumored monster from Pinghai City, who conquered the superior difficulty assessment, was sitting right in front of him. A shadowy figure zeroed in on his target, practically radiating malice. The name Lin Zi was spat out like venom, echoing aggressively through the dark. Night had completely fallen over the luxurious grand manor where the exam candidates were resting. Deep inside, thick warm mist swallowed the entire bathroom. The girls groaned in frustration, loudly complaining about being forced to squeeze into such a tight space. They awkwardly huddled together in the bubbling water, trying to make the most of the cramped tub. But out in the halls, sudden chaos erupted as a student was brutally sent flying across the room. The arrogant bullies eagerly provoked a fight, completely hungry for a one-sided beatdown. Lindsay's patience finally snapped, a terrifying blood-red aura erupting from his body. He stepped directly into the line of fire, warning them that they could insult him all they wanted. But the absolute second they dared to bully his sister, they crossed a fatal line. The thugs recoiled in pure shock as Lindsay fiercely vowed not to let them walk away breathing. His eye burned with a blinding golden light, overflowing with unfiltered killing intent. Leaving the battered thugs trembling on the floor, Lindsay coldly promised to teach them a final lesson later. Suddenly, a massive surge of blue and green energy flared up as a much stronger opponent stepped onto the scene. Lindsay stood completely unfazed, his immense presence clashing directly against his new challenger. Despite the overwhelming tension, he kept himself firmly planted right next to his sister to keep her safe. He forcefully closed his eyes, suffocating his raging power to avoid drawing unnecessary trouble. Taking a deep breath, he calmly reminded his group to keep their focus entirely on the upcoming exam. Refusing to waste any more energy, he led his team straight away from the glaring rivals. But the silver-haired thug just smirked, clearly refusing to back down from the challenge. Lindsay's sister caught his malicious glare, her guard instantly shooting back up. The bully locked his predatory gaze entirely onto her. He bit down on his thumb, a cruel mocking grin stretching wide across his face. Cracking his knuckles, he let out a twisted, completely maniacal laugh. His gang boldly blocked the path, practically daring the Pinghai students to make the first move. In an instant, Lindsay's towering shadow engulfed his sister, shielding her from their disgusting stares. His eyes glowed with a demonic red light, fully prepared to slaughter them right there. From a safe distance, a bandana-wearing student quietly watched the explosive scene unfold. He calmly noted to his friends that the hidden genius who cleared the superior difficulty might just be among them, deciding to test Lindsay himself later. Back at the dining table, the pink-haired girl desperately asked Lindsay why he didn't just reveal his incredible achievements to shut everyone up. Lindsay casually wiped his mouth, completely unbothered by the trash talk. He coldly explained that keeping a low profile was the only way to avoid becoming an early target. His sister gazed at him in total awe, completely amazed by his flawless strategic thinking. The group safely moved down the long corridor, leaving the cafeteria drama behind. They all agreed that starting a massive brawl right before the exams would only result in severe punishments. Meanwhile, the silver-haired thug continued his relentless taunts, mocking the Pinghai girls as pretty but hopelessly soft. He smirked with pure arrogance, severely underestimating their actual combat power. Without a single warning, a devastating high-speed punch slammed directly into his face, shattering his smug expression. Unbothered by the violence, the girls casually remarked that the specific person the bullies were looking for hadn't even shown up today. Lindsay easily turned away another curious student, cleanly shutting down their investigation. The student walked off with a heavy sigh, visibly disappointed by the total dead end, refusing to be seen as weak links. The girls loudly vowed to train out of their minds tonight and crush the rival schools. The sister excitedly suggested that they should just ditch their rooms and all stay with Lindsay. The girls immediately blushed at the thought of spending the whole night together, their imaginations totally running wild. But out of nowhere, the silver-haired thug reappeared. Creepily trying to force his way toward the sister, he arrogantly smirked, asking if he and his boys could crash in their room instead. The very air exploded as a figure completely shattered the floorboards, lunging forward at terrifying speed. The thug struck out with a vicious, lethal attack, aiming to instantly cripple his target. But a calm, unbelievably steady hand effortlessly caught the brutal punch in midair. A senior student aggressively stepped in, fiercely scolding the thug for humiliating their entire group in public. He coldly stated that the intercepted punch packed enough raw force to officially level the score. Lindsay glared straight through him, his eyes making it crystal clear that this rivalry was far from over. Later that evening, the pink-haired girl blushed deeply, eagerly offering Lindsay a massage to thank him for his brutal training regimen. The other girls cheered in pure joy, absolutely thrilled that their pet beasts had successfully broken through to the second level. Back in the steamy confines of the bath, the sister loudly scolded the others to stop touching her randomly. Ignoring the earlier threats, the girls playfully splashed around, letting the warm water completely wash away the day's insane tension. The massive rock ghost surged forward, its jagged fists ready to crush anything in its path. With a flick of his wrist, Lindsay commanded his spectral guardians, treating the deadly encounter like a simple game. A confident smirk danced across his face as he prepared to unleash his true power. The air shattered as devastating blows rained down, echoing heavily through the battlefield. A two-headed forest python reared back, its glowing red eyes filled with pure confusion. It slammed against a shimmering blue barrier, completely unable to reach the calm young man standing just inches away. The massive snake bared its fangs in frustration, but Lindsay casually noted that keeping his spirit guardian active was a cheap price to pay for absolute safety. With his defense fully secured, he decided it was finally time to stop holding back. In the crowded hall beforehand, cocky seniors had already started sizing up the fresh meat, roughly wrapping their arms around unsuspecting students. Guan Ning watched the blatant display of arrogance, popping a bubblegum bubble with mild annoyance. Standing at the front of the room, the head instructor's voice cut through the chatter, warning them that the real battlefield would be far more unforgiving. He made it entirely clear anyone too terrified to step up could walk out right now. The arrogant seniors scanned the crowd, their eyes gleaming with predatory excitement. They were already placing bets on who would rise to the top and claim the throne among the new recruits. But Lindsay remained completely unfazed, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Beside him, Guan Ning silently prayed that she would be able to stick by his side during the brutal trial. Before the test began, Lindsay had quietly instructed her to use her fierce magic bird to track him down as soon as they entered the illusion. She nodded with fierce determination, ready to execute the plan the moment they separated. The instructor turned away from the window, preparing to initiate the deadly exam. A heavy silence fell over the gathered students as the dark reality of their situation finally set in. Suddenly, a massive rift of crimson energy tore open the space before them. The blinding light swallowed the students whole, violently dragging them into the illusionary world. Leaves rustled wildly as the teleportation scattered them across a dense, unfamiliar jungle. Lindsay landed gracefully in a sunlit clearing, taking in his new surroundings. He quickly scanned the tree line, his senses instantly on high alert for an ambush. High above the canopy, a colossal structure caught his immediate attention. A towering red monolith hovered in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the entire forest. Beside him, the rock ghost pounded its fists together, practically vibrating with excitement at the thought of crushing stronger beasts. But Lindsay's mind was focused on logistics, silently hoping Guan Ning wouldn't run into deadly trouble trying to find him. Somewhere nearby, a patch of underbrush burst into flames, signaling the arrival of another challenger. A massive, fiery centipede scuttled across the grass, leaving a trail of scorched earth in its wake. Guan Ning stepped out from the shadows, her majestic firebird burning brightly beside her. Checking her wrist panel, she let out a sigh of relief as the timer locked in at 3 hours and 45 minutes. Wasting no time, she turned to her loyal companion to execute their strategy. With a sharp command, she ordered the magic bird to take flight and begin the search. The fiery avian launched itself into the sky, leaving a brilliant streak of light across the clouds. It soared gracefully over the endless sea of green, acting as her ultimate eye in the sky. Staring up at the canopy, she gripped her fists, desperately hoping Lindsay was safe. Back in the grand hall, the massive red stone tablet loomed quietly over the remaining faculty. The instructor's ominous voice echoed in the memories of the students, reminding them of the terrifying briefing. He had strutted into the room, declaring that he had both good news and terrible news for the recruits. With a sinister glare, he ruthlessly insulted the entire batch, calling them the worst students he had ever seen. Cracking his knuckles, he made it clear that survival in this academy would not be guaranteed. The sheer bloodlust in his voice left the new recruits trembling in pure fear. A monstrous reptilian beast roared in the background of his presentation, showcasing the absolute horrors awaiting them. He explained that every candidate would receive a digital score panel magically bound to their arm. Points would be awarded for slaughtering beasts 10 for the weakest, escalating up to 40 for the deadliest predators. But the true horror was the permadeath rule. If a student or their pet died within the illusion, they were permanently eliminated from the academy. The instructor chuckled darkly, thoroughly relishing the terror washing over the helpless crowd. The brutal reality finally set in: one wrong move meant instant and total failure. When a brave student nervously asked if hunting beasts was the only way to score points, the entire atmosphere shifted. A twisted, knowing smile slowly crept across the instructor's face. The crowd erupted into a panic as they realized the horrifying truth: the system was intentionally designed to encourage murder. By eliminating other candidates, they could mercilessly steal every single point their victims had gathered. Back in the present, Lindsay's rock ghost crouched low in the thick brush waiting for an opening. He decided to hold back his full power, using this chance to test the absolute limits of his new summon. The rock ghost's rare dual attributes made it a terrifying weapon, and Lindsay wanted to see exactly what it was capable of. It stepped out to confront the two-headed python, radiating a suffocating aura of intimidation. Lindsay watched from the sidelines, analyzing every single movement like a seasoned grandmaster, but the python, sensing it was vastly outmatched, immediately turned tail and slithered away, knowing a 10-point kill wasn't worth the effort. Glancing at his wrist, Lindsay noted his score was still at 0, with barely any time lost. He quickly realized the fatal flaw in the exam's design: the arm panel didn't show the overall rankings at all. The only way to know if you made the top 10 was to physically check the central stone tablet. This meant the center of the forest would inevitably become an absolute slaughterhouse as time ran out. Worse yet, anyone who actually managed to crack the top 10 would have their exact coordinates broadcasted to the entire map. It was a giant glowing bullseye, guaranteeing a relentless siege from desperate players trying to steal their hard-earned points. Lindsay narrowed his eyes, fully grasping the deeply malicious intent behind the trial's rules. It was a pure player versus player bloodbath, but he just smiled because absolute strength rendered all rules completely meaningless. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, a panicked student screamed at his teammate, viciously blaming her for dragging him down as they desperately fled from danger. The instructor's final recorded words echoed ominously in the sky, reminding everyone that there was absolutely no turning back. The towering crimson crystal pulsed with a dark energy, officially marking the start of the nightmare known as the Secret Forest. Inside its glowing facets, the reflections of massive beasts and hidden dangers promised nothing but absolute chaos. A demonic wild boar stepped out of the shadows, its glowing red eyes locking onto its next meal as the brutal hunt officially began. The forest battlefield was absolute chaos, filled with clashing beasts fighting for survival. In the thick of the wilderness, wild creatures darted through the trees, constantly on edge. A strange monkey beast happily waved its arms, completely unaware of the looming danger. It smiled widely, totally ignorant to the brutal reality of the survival exams. Above them, a magnificent fiery bird soared through the canopy, violently securing another kill. Trudging through the tall grass, she kept her guard up, knowing her pet beast couldn't stray too far from her side. Checking her coordinates, she realized her only option was to push forward and test her luck in the perilous zone. Her thoughts immediately drifted to her brother Lindsay, knowing his overwhelming strength would easily secure him a spot in the top 10. But deep down, a burning rivalry flared up as she remembered how he had stolen her thunder in their last encounter. Refusing to be outdone again, she unleashed her power, a terrifying demonic aura exploding around her. The sudden surge of dark energy caught everyone completely off guard. A massive shadowy avian beast materialized from the purple flames, radiating pure menace. Without a moment's hesitation, a massive hairy fist launched forward with bone-crushing speed. The sheer force of the punch tore through the air, leaving a devastating shockwave in its wake. Realizing the danger, she screamed at her beast to dodge the lethal strike. The fiery bird desperately flapped its wings, barely escaping the terrifying ambush. But just as she thought they were safe, A sudden movement in her peripheral vision made her blood run cold. Something incredibly fast was shooting straight toward her through the dense underbrush. A sinister, twisted grin emerged from the shadows as her attacker finally closed in. Before she could even react, a hand clamped over her mouth, a chilling voice whispering that her elimination was imminent. Meanwhile, a quick glance at a wristwatch revealed the grim reality: 40 points secured. With only 3.5 hours left on the clock, a terrifying figure clad in jagged, crimson-eyed armor casually poked the lifeless body of a defeated pig beast. The massive creature lay utterly defeated, just another victim of the brutal exam. The armored warrior turned to his companion, his deep voice slicing through the tense silence of the woods. The black-haired boy smirked, his mind racing with schemes on how to exploit the competitors who didn't yet know his true identity. The armored beastmaster stared at a bizarre creature, completely baffled by its rare and unusual appearance. The duo continued their march across the open field, practically radiating arrogant confidence. The young boy brushed his hair back, a smug smile plastered across his face as he reveled in their rising score. Beside them floated a bizarre, fleshy pink blob known as the Big Mouth Monster, a truly grotesque anomaly. Suddenly, a dazzling diamond-shaped flame bird erupted into the clearing, drawing everyone's attention. A searing blast of fire instantly scorched the battlefield. A massive golden-backed ostrich squawked in sheer panic, desperately trying to flee the inferno. But it was too late. A massive explosion engulfed the area, guaranteeing an easy 20 points for the attacker. Startled by the blast, she whipped around, demanding to know who was hiding in the shadows. A muscular, fur-covered arm firmly gripped a wooden boomerang, stepping out into the light. A cocky guy wearing a beanie burst into laughter, thoroughly enjoying the chaos he just caused. The black-haired boy threw his hands up in excitement, thrilled to have crossed paths with such a useful ally. But behind that friendly facade, the beanie-wearing guy was already plotting a much darker betrayal. He gave a chillingly hollow smile, secretly mocking the naive brat for agreeing to In his twisted mind, he was already planning the exact moment to backstab his new partner and steal all his hard-earned points. High above, the tranquil sky stood in stark contrast to the vicious struggles playing out on the ground below. The cocky attacker smugly praised her reflexes while keeping her trapped in an iron grip. He pulled her painfully close, completely neutralizing any chance of physical escape. With a mocking whisper, he taunted her, knowing she could no longer bark commands at her magic flame bird. He arrogantly explained the superior intelligence of humanoid pet beasts, boasting about how they could fight purely on their own instinct. But instead of panicking, she gritted her teeth, revealing that her previous command was nothing but a calculated distraction. Suddenly, a hulking hairy beast lunged forward, snatching the fiery bird right out of the sky. The flaming creature squawked helplessly, desperately trying to break free from the monster's crushing grip. In that split second, her eye gleamed with fierce, tactical brilliance. The rustling leaves fell silent, masking the explosive counterattack she was about to unleash. Feeling his grip tighten around her wrist, she finally made her move. Using his own momentum against him, she violently twisted her body, flipping the arrogant attacker clean over her shoulder. He plummeted through the air, completely losing control of the situation. With a bone-rattling thud, he slammed onto his back, groaning in pure agony. His eyes widened in absolute terror as a menacing dark aura instantly engulfed the space directly behind him. From out of nowhere, a massive ostrich let out a deafening panicked screech. She landed flawlessly, her posture screaming absolute combat readiness. The giant bird charged forward, its body igniting with chaotic, blazing energy. Trees violently shook as the massive beast barreled straight into the danger zone. A sudden, violent collision sent shockwaves through the forest, proving that this fight was far from over. Quickly backing away, she rapidly analyzed the situation, pulling up the pet beast guide from her memory. The system immediately identified the hulking creature as a giant clawed monkey, a terrifying rank 2 beast. Beside it floated the bizarre big mouth monster, an equally dangerous rank 2 anomaly. The black-haired boy calmly stepped out from the brush, looking down at the chaos unfolding. His repulsive fleshy pink monster floated beside him, looking weirdly harmless despite its rank. The beanie-wearing guy quickly recovered his composure, arrogantly warning her not to underestimate them. The two boys stood side by side, radiating a suffocating level of confidence. Towering beside them stood the imposing Odo barbarian, gripping its deadly boomerang tightly. The humanoid beast slowly advanced, its heavy footsteps echoing menacingly through the trees. The arrogant attacker flashed a wicked, bloodthirsty grin, completely convinced he had already won. Standing her ground against the overwhelming odds, she fiercely called them out for their shameful, cowardly kill-stealing. The guy on the ground casually brushed off her insult, pointing out that survival of the fittest was the only rule that mattered here. Bursting with overwhelming arrogance, he pointed straight at her, ordering his beast to take down her fiery bird and rob her blind.